Wednesday night sports delight. Wait a minute. There you go. The platform sports talk show. I am your boy Smooth, along with
Joe Bo. I
there
never
we
know what to
go,
say.
Joe Bo. Your Wednesday night sports delight. When it's about sports, it becomes our business, and
Business just keeps picking up.
there it is. What's going on over there, Joe?
Not much, just on my phone constantly for hockey and baseball. And breaking news: Joey Gallo is going to the Yankees.
So it is official. Okay, Joey
Yeah,
Gallo.
don't know what the return is yet.
Yeah, I'm waiting up. I got it on my. No, I don't. I got the update that he got scratched from the lineup, but I'm waiting on, like you said, the actual pieces that's involved in the trade. So, yes, today's show is jam-packed. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in to another edition of your Wednesday night sports delight. Make sure right now y'all go ahead and y'all go ahead and share. Show love on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram. Make sure, because Bunny isn't here yet, but her and Stanley will be on later on, of course, along with our special guests. Make sure on YouTube you subscribe, click on that bell, because anytime we go live, Joe,
You will be notified.
hey, there we go.
Hey.
And for those watching on Facebook, if you want to leave comments, you have to make sure that you comment under the platform Sports Talk Show page, so we can all see your comments on the left side of the screen. Be shown all around the world, and you're famous. So we shall have a wonderful show tonight. Joe, how excited are you for our special guest that we'll be having on later on?
I'm pretty excited. You know, like hockey free agency was today. So far, nothing for the Blues has happened. That could change. Army might have something up his sleeve. We'll see. A lot of big names being moved around, but I'm just excited to ask just other questions. Not even just questions about the free agency that's going on right now, but just questions about the Blues in general.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah, and we'll talk about that later on with our special guest, but there has been some moves going on already, and as you heard earlier, baseball, and of course in hockey. Then I believe Thursday night you have the NBA draft, so a lot of players' lives are going to be changed from, of course, college ranks, or some who may have been overseas and who skipped college, and their name be called up and get into the money. So it's a very, very big week going on in sports, and once again, today is crazy. As of today as well in football, all the NFL teams have reported a training camp. So it's like, okay, basketball ended, last week or 2 weeks ago. Here comes, football now. So you just got to love
And
it.
Rogers headlines, like always.
Yeah, so you just got to love it, man. That's why we always say sports is always the ultimate reality show. Always something going on, some kind of story between the story. And, of course, you got the game as well. So I love it. And we're glad to have this show 4 years strong consistently. It ain't going to stop. Going to continue to get better and better. And once again, it just doesn't stop. So with that being said, speaking of sports, Joe, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the Olympics going on right now in Tokyo. So as you see, it has Tokyo 2020. We all know they got pushed back to this year, but that still is the original logo. So we doing like that. But have you been able to see any of the Olympics at all, Joe?
Haven't been keeping up. I see Twitter stuff, how people aren't too happy about the men's basketball team. There's that. I've seen, everything that's going on with Simone, which sucks. That's about all I've really seen. I haven't really been keeping up. Just been crazy. Like, what I see right now is on Twitter. I'm working, watching baseball, and keep up on my phone on Twitter. So, but yeah, I've seen basketball and a little bit about Simone, which, like I said, it sucks, that whole situation.
And let's go ahead and talk about Miss Simone Biles right now. As you all know, and it's amazing because on Ladies' Night, y'all had that talk, about mental issues, with Tiffany Scott Horton, how she talked about mental issues and how it can affect athletes. And it's really been showing over these last few years, from Think about DeMar DeRozan from the NBA, Kevin Love. Then you've had, I don't know if you recall that show. What is it? Pardon the Interruption, and Tony Reali.
Hmm.
You know, he hosts that show. And what's the other show that he did? The one that you no, that's the show. Pardon, no. What's the other show called? One that they be hitting the buzzards every time they say a good what it'll come back to me soon. But he even had a post on Twitter recently just saying how he suffers sometimes from anxiety and stuff like that. And then I just think overall, just what's going on with this pandemic over this last year, it's really been exposing a lot of people coming out about mental health. And Simone Biles is right there along with them. She had plans on joining the team. What she did started off not too great, and pretty much just the pressure of knowing that you are the GOAT, and the pressure that it brings to represent a whole country, knowing everyone is expecting you to be great at every moment, every second. Looks like it may have gotten to her, just like the pressures of Naomi Osaka from tennis, how she had to back away from playing in Wimbledon and the French Open and whatever else because of her mental state. So, with you just seeing this, Joe, about Simone Biles and other athletes coming out, what's your thought process? And do you think this is going to start being more of a trend with other athletes and other sports coming out and saying, you know what, maybe I need to step back as well?
I think so, especially with the pandemic. I think even they've asked Chris Bryant about it last night, and he even brought it up. Even like with like his name being brought up constantly since the beginning of the year about trade talks, this and that. Just these people are human, obviously, but I mean they got to deal with a lot of stuff, and I can imagine like Simone, like we said, she is literally the GOAT, that we talk about for the Olympics. Like you talk about Michael Phelps, you talk about Simone Biles, and people like that for Team USA. So I think it's definitely going to continue, especially with the pandemic going on and now cases are rising and everything. So I think you're going to see this stuff more often.
And Miss Williams, shouts out to you. She says, "Hi Joe, hi Fred. Good evening to you."
Honest Williams.
Let's see, Jody, Marty. I think you know Jody.
It's my Uncle Joey.
Says, "Boo Olympics." I can't be mad at that because I think I asked last week our special guest, in which he was incredible, Reggie Daughtry, excuse me. He was me and him was kind of like on the same page, like this pandemic going on, top athletes, not even just from the U.S. but other countries as well. They're getting COVID and having to leave, and whatever, all these hopes and dreams, and then the stress and everything, not having fans for real, it takes away from the ambiance of being in the Olympics, hearing the crowd roar when you're doing something great, or whatever, boo, whatever it is, you take it all in. It's like, man, should this Olympics really be going on? Do you feel that the Olympics should have gone on like it is now? Or should they just, should have just waited a little bit because, once again, numbers are rising everywhere?
I mean, it's easy to say now that they probably should have just held off, because of the numbers. Like, there's no one in Tokyo right now watching, really.
Man.
So, like I said, it's easy to say now, they probably should have held off. But at some point, things got to go back to normal, So, yeah, I mean, that's really all I can say about it. It's a crappy situation. The whole COVID thing that's been going on for almost 2 years now. It's it has to go back to normal eventually. It just sucks that it's the Olympics that are being like, it's the Olympics. It's big spotlight on it right now.
Yeah. And let's see, a couple of comments here. Miss Williams said that she caught the end of one beach volleyball game. Then she said that the Olympics are particularly stressful for athletes this year. And I mean, it's usually that's been the case, every Olympics because of, like you say, you represent your country, but it just takes extra meaning with so many people coming out about mental health and going through the pandemic. Is your family okay? Are you going to be okay? Can you go somewhere to eat without worrying about catching it? You know what I'm saying? It just adds to so much stress going on. And, for those who are condemning Simone Biles for stepping up and saying, hey, I'm going through this right now and I can't even get sleep for real, or I'm thinking about a routine happening and I'm just like, I'm just off, whatever. And for those who are questioning her, saying she's not representing the country right, she's being selfish or whatever it is the case. Either, well, first off, you stupid. Bottom line, we'll keep it real on this show. You stupid. You must not have been an athlete and been in pressurized situations, or if you were an athlete, you weren't great at all. So you don't know how it feels to be great and how to have those expectations to do what you do for your country. So for those who think like that, who thinks that she is doing wrong or whatever else, no, stop it. Right now,
Yeah.
bottom line, just stop it.
Yeah, I mean, like what you listen to 101 all day long, like Wayno was saying, like he heard from other people, like other gymnastics saying, like even like when they're in the air, there's just so much thought going on when they're in the air, and that's what she does. That's her job. She's in the air flipping around, and she's just all in her head and stuff. That can't be healthy if she's not mentally 100%, in there. She's gonna hurt herself. So better off just take care of herself, take care of her body, take care of her mind. I mean, these Olympics will probably be going down like the every athlete, well, not every athlete, but every sport last year with baseball. The Dodgers. You make fun of the Astros, but Dodgers, people say there's an asterisk. Lakers, there might be an asterisk. Everyone's saying that stuff. But maybe that's the same thing with the Olympics.
Yeah. Let's see. And Mimi Love, shouts out to you. Good evening to you. See, so Jody says, don't forget these athletes are kids. Yeah, majority of them, 17 to 25 ish. I think there's one person who is in the Olympics that's 15 years old. Most of them. It would be tough as an adult. Exactly. Ms. Williams says, but this year they can't have their families with them. There's constant testing, the worry of country. Yeah, everything that I was just saying. So you have all them other elements coming in. It's of course it's going to bring a lot of different pressure along with it. So for those who are trying to clown these athletes, like I said, you must not be good at all, or must not have been great, so you can experience what they have, went through or are going through right now. So the first thing we need to all do is just pray for these young athletes. Pray for all these athletes, because you don't know whether you've been in the league and doing it just starting out now, or you've been doing it for years and years and years. You're still human, and people continue to forget that. Ms. Williams says a lot of stress on everyone. She's praying for them all mentally, emotionally, and physically. Yes, that's what the world needs. That's the support that she needs. I recall when Simone Biles had a post or was talking to the press, she was like, I hope that U.S. is not mad at us, or is not ashamed of us. She shouldn't even have to put that out there. You know what I'm saying? After everything that she's done for the sport, she's the most decorated athlete. She's the best. And because of her thinking of herself, self-love first, now she's, stone her. Oh, take her to the wall. Really? Lord, come on with it. Yeah, so definitely good point, Mimi, in regards to the stress. It's definitely crazy, and like I said, if you haven't even walked an inch in their shoes, you can't say nothing. So just just cut it out, please. Just cut it out. So it don't make no sense. So keeping with the Olympics, let's go ahead. You talked about the men's basketball team. Yes, they have been talked about. They had a bad start. Game 1 against France, they lost pretty badly. A few guys I just see on your screen right now, like Drew Holiday, just arrived on the team. A couple days ago, same thing with his teammate Chris Middleton. Of course, he won the championship with the Bucks, and then Devin Booker. So, first game, okay, they wasn't really ready to do their thing, but a lot of people were saying, okay, it's time to get a little scared now because this team now lost already in Tokyo. What's going on? But then last night they played against, or should I say this morning, our time, they played against I think it was Iran, and they blew them out by like almost 60 points. So it's like, okay, maybe back to reality. This team is maybe now coming together, and we shall see. I did have questions about Greg Popovich, the head coach. Is he a little bit out of tune with coaching this team? Is his old method still, will they still apply to this kind of game of basketball? But we shall see. It's different now because you got the Drew Holidays and Devin Bookers and Chris Middleton, guys who can fill parts of the team that was kind of suffering at first. So we shall see. But it's not like Iran had a lot of NBA players on their team at all. So we're going to see what happens when they start playing against other teams with other NBA players like France and like Luka Doncic's team and Spain and so many other squads that got NBA caliber guys on their team. So we shall see. You've been checking.
Sometimes the NBA goes overseas to play for these other guys.
And that's the thing too. And I was telling this to Bunny a while back, like, this is a whole different Olympics now because thanks to the Dream Team, these guys have learned how to play the game, and no matter where you at. So you can't just say, oh, because we USA, we the best, we gonna just say destroy you. It's a whole different ball game now. Whole different ball game. So you can't take these teams lightly. You know, you saw what happened when they were in Vegas, getting, ready for going to, getting prepared to go to Tokyo. So you can't take these teams lightly. And to me, that's going to make this Olympics different and special in regards to just the basketball, because you shouldn't expect every game to be a blowout. There needs to be some, wait a minute, what's going to happen? They going to lose? Some kind of excitement. So let's see what happens with the men's team. On the other hand, the women's team, they ain't lost in like 20 years.
So how they doing? I haven't seen anything about them.
They've won one game so far. I think they play another game either later on this evening or tomorrow. But they haven't lost a game in, like I said, in probably like 4 or 5 Olympics. Probably longer than that. Their streak is incredible. And so they're looking loaded. They're looking ready. So shouts out to them. This is the first year that they had for the women's side 3-on-3 basketball as well. And they already won the gold medal. I think it happened yesterday that they already won the gold medal for that. So shouts out to the ladies holding things down. There's been a few upsets for those who love to watch swimming. There's been a few upsets. What's her name? Kate. What's her name? Joe.
Starts with the L. Though.
Yeah. Ledecky or Ledecky, something like that. Sorry, everybody. But she lost, I think, the 100 meter, but then she won the next one. So it's been a few upsets going on, but I think a lot of people are really looking forward to seeing what happens on the track and field. That's when a lot of people are going to be tuned in for real. I'm seeing on my timeline, let's go track and field. It's time to get it on. So let's see what happens with track and field as well. I know like Miss Williams earlier said she watched a little volleyball. How's Team USA doing in volleyball, Miss Williams, or for anyone else watching right now? Let us know what's going on with the U.S. and volleyball. And overall, let's just hope once again that everyone's healthy. And there is no one that gets put in a situation where they have to leave and go back home or be isolated because of COVID. That's the biggest thing, man. We need to just really support and pray that there's no issues going on out there. Mimi Love says, lack of common sense in this world, sadly, yeah, all around the world, same song. There you go. Okay, go ahead, Joe. And then Miss Williams says she agrees with you. Performing if she's having issues could be dangerous. Exactly. You're thinking about, like I said, doing your little twists and flips, and you're thinking too much about something else, and then you may land wrong and broke leg or ankle, or whatever else. So we'll see what's up with that. Jody says, great song. Right. Taking it back right there. So next thing, let's talk about what's going on in college in the NCAA. So last week, I believe it happened like that Thursday after our show, was when the University of Texas and University of Oklahoma, they wanted to go ahead and leave the Big 12 to go to the SEC. And of course, these two teams are the biggest teams, especially marketing wise, out of the Big 12. And it just brought crazy head waves, air waves, everything waves. Everyone's going crazy because of what's going on. And now, if you have these two teams join the SEC, in which they officially stated that they are expecting invitation by 2025, man, it's going to change the whole dynamic, not just in the SEC, not just in the Big 12, but just with everything going on in the NCAA with the name, image, likeness, everything. It's just a real game changer right now. What's going on in college? What you think about that, Joe?
Fred, you know I don't pay attention to this college
That's
stuff.
why I
I
asked you.
did see, I did see
That's why I
on
asked
Twitter
you.
today. I think um a kid like going straight, like just skipping his senior year and just going straight to go play for
Yeah.
one of these big, I think, SEC teams.
So there was I saw a post today. I don't know the kid's name. I apologize, but he's like a high school senior, and he's considering
Got a
skipping.
nice mold.
I'm sorry, he's a junior, but
Okay.
he's planning on skipping his senior year so he can I guess playing, should I say, so he can go ahead and go to a college where he already has potential endorsements on the way that can bring millions of dollars in
So he's be
already.
like 17, 18 years old making millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, and even last week, Reggie and I was talking about Mikey Williams. He's one of the top players in all of high school basketball, and he already signed an NIL deal, and is already expected to make millions before he even goes to college. He haven't even chosen a college yet. Like that's
You
how.
don't know where he's going.
Yeah, that's how amazing it is. Like he hasn't even chosen his school yet, and he's already getting all these deals to make millions of dollars. So it's a whole lot going on in college right now, and it even affected home in regards to for those who love Mizzou, because Jim Sterk, the AD for Mizzou, he announced 2 days ago that he's actually going to be stepping down, and he has
It's
two
over.
years left on his deal. And what they're saying is that because of the climate change that's going on, once again, the NIL, OU and Oklahoma, I'm sorry, Texas and Oklahoma possibly going to the SEC is bringing so much that maybe he's like, you know what? Maybe it might be a good time for me to go ahead and step away because it's gonna be a whole lot to try to digest and try to work through. So of course he's gonna stay on until they find a replacement. But he did shock some people, a few people, in regards to him going ahead and leaving now with 2 years left. Word is he's still gonna be paid for those 2 years remaining. But yes, he will be stepping away, and Mizzou is on a national search for a new AD. He's done a wonderful job though. He came in during a time where there were a lot of protests going on at Mizzou. They was fighting a legal battle with a former football player possibly cheating, having a teacher, a tutor help out the kids and stuff like that. So it was a whole lot going on, a whole lot of turmoil going on in Mizzou. But ever since then, they've expanded in regards to their football field. They've brought in he brought in Council Morton and also Coach Eli Drinkowitz, and he's made a hell of a change in the culture for Mizzou. And then they just signed off on a new indoor practice facility. I just saw a post from Council the other day. They uh, redoing the actual gym floor and rooms inside of the Columbia Arena. So I mean, there's so much going on, great things going on in Mizzou. So he's gonna leave it at a great place. Now the big thing
Yeah, I mean,
is,
with Gonzo and Drinkowitz, I feel like a lot of positive has happened since they've
yeah,
both been there.
yeah. So a lot of good things have happened since he took over Mizzou. But now the biggest thing is who can they bring in to keep the line going, keep that energy going. A lot of people have been saying they need someone who had like a Coach Drinkowitz-like feel, who can bring excitement, a change, bring more attention to Mizzou, especially because now you're going to have Texas and Oklahoma in the next few years coming to the SEC. So that's going to affect recruits. Going to be like, man, I want to go to Mizzou back then, but now I'm seeing Texas and Oklahoma in the same conference as Mizzou and Alabama and LSU and Texas A&M. That could be more appealing. So they need to get someone there who can be like, coming to Mizzou is going to be the best move of your life, and we're going to change the game, and you're going to be the reason, or one of the reasons why we're going to be that school in the SEC no matter who comes in. So once again, a whole lot, people, a whole lot of sports news going on right now. This is the Platform Sports Talk Show. I am your boy Smooth, along with
Jobo.
Pretty soon, we should be expecting Stan. Of course, last week, unfortunately, he his knee buckled and he couldn't be on the show. He was in the ER. He sent me photos. We like, what's going on with your knee? So he has to be off it for a little while until he gets another checkup. But he'll be joining us very soon, of course, from the confines of his home. So he'll be tuned in. Bunny, she's taking care of business, but she said that she should hopefully be on very soon. Then, of course, top of the hour, we have our special guest. So right now, hit that like, hit that share, follow us everywhere, bring them comments in. If there's something going on in your sports world that you want to talk about right now, let us know what's happening. We can discuss it. We can debate. We can do the whole nine. So going back real quick to NHL, has there been any other moves, Joe, that you have seen so far? You like, okay, this team could be something to be dealt with next season.
I mean, obviously Tampa, they just re-signed Point again for 8 years. I don't know how they keep doing that, but they're just still. I feel like they're still gonna be that team. Landeskog went back to the Avalanche, so obviously, they got unfinished business. So those are like the two big ones. I was surprised that Fleury was traded away from the Knights. I don't know what the Hawks are trying to do. Are they trying to compete? I have no idea. So Fleury might retire. No one knows. So
that's a crazy situation too. Yeah, that's real crazy.
It's all weird.
Yeah, because when I listened to 101 ESPN yesterday, they're talking about that issue, and he didn't want to go nowhere. He was fine, being in Vegas. He wanted to be, one of them guys where you just be on one team your whole career, and you go ahead and retire. No, well, actually, I'm sorry. He was drafted to Las Vegas when he had the expansion draft. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was with them.
Yeah. So ever since then, he's been on the team, and he has he doesn't want to leave. And now, like you said, he's pondering his future. Like, should I go ahead and just retire? Because you can't say, no, I ain't going, because it's not your call. Yeah. So he had a lot to think about. But even then, I know the Blackhawks, they made some other moves outside of Fleury too. So looks like they're trying to get back to some prominence here. I know they had a few years now where they haven't really been as great as they have been years past.
Yeah, but I mean, they don't have Brent Seabrook anymore. They don't have Duncan Keith anymore, I think it was. And those are like those two big guys that were part of that little dynasty they had. Obviously, they still have Taves. They still have Kane. But they're trying to make some type of move. So we'll see what happens. Next year, if everything goes well, it will be a normal season playing against normal teams again. So we'll actually see them next year. So that'll be fun. I miss playing the Blackhawks, even though I hate them.
Yeah, it felt weird not playing against them and then not playing against the Red Wings, even though, of course, the Red Wings aren't even in the Western Conference anymore. It's been, about 4 or 5 years now? But, back in the day, you had a Red Wing jersey on anywhere around St. Louis. Whether they have that punch a Red Wing in the face day or whatever it's called back in
Yeah,
the
Randy.
day. So, just stuff
Yeah.
like that. But yeah, next season. And I don't think we discussed it before, but since they couldn't do it this past year due to COVID, January the 1st of 2022, the Blues will be facing off against the Minnesota Wild in Minneapolis. So we got the Winter Classic back. So look forward to that. But the biggest thing, in which, of course, when we have our special guest on very soon, what kind of team are we going to have for the Blues?
I don't know. It's gonna be different looking. Brendan sent me something that has the lines, predicted lines, that you know, it's it's okay. I just feel like there's something missing. And like I told you before we started talking live, I never thought in my life, 8 years ago, however long ago it's been, that I'd be like, I do not want Vladimir Tarasenko on this team. And I don't know. It feels bad saying that, but I don't know what it's going to be like. Is the chemistry going to be bad if Army can't figure something out? That's the question that we're going to have for our special guests.
Yeah, one person that I feel is going to make a splash, make something happen, I'm more confident in right now, should I say, is Doug Armstrong. He's the guy that, okay, you think that you got him, but he's like, what, 2 or 3 steps ahead already. Look what happened on how we acquired Ryan O'Reilly. Everyone was talking about, how we finally got a center when we got Tyler Bozak, right? And then right behind that, whoa, Blues acquired Ryan O'Reilly, and you saw what happened. So
we didn't even have time to celebrate Bozak. I think it was like an hour, maybe right after.
Right, because like we said, we were trying to find someone to, we had Backus who left, and then oh God, what's the one guy name who we all had a good hopes for being a center? Oh Lord, it'll come back to me in a second. Oh, what is that guy's name? He plays center for the Blues, and he didn't sign an extension. What is his name? It'll come back to me.
I don't know who you're thinking of.
Not Peter. What is his name? It'll come back to me. I'm going to have to think about it and go on Google real quick and find out. Like tip of the tongue, but I can't think of his name right now.
Paul Stat.
No, because he got traded to Vegas or Winnipeg, one of them teams, so I knew about him. But there was someone else I'm trying to think of that he kind of gave me like Peter Forsberg vibes, but I can't think of his name right now. Like he wasn't like Peter Forsberg. I'm just saying he.
I said it's a big name.
Right. No, he wasn't anywhere near Forsberg, but I'm trying to think of his name. But it'll come back to me later on, hopefully, especially when we have our special guest join us very soon. But yeah, I know a lot of people right now in St. Louis are up in arms because of what's going on with the lack of moves being made by the Blues right now because free agency, even though it just started today. Then, of course, on the other end, what's going on with the Cardinals. When I say this team here is the most I don't know what to think about squad in history, this Cardinals team right now, it's like one day you want to say, okay, here we go. We finally got it. We're about to make a run. Let's go. Then they just had one of them games like they had in Cincinnati or like today. And it's like, this team ain't going to do it. Then like next day, here we go. We on the roll. Yes, let's go.
I think we're like 6-4 in our last 10. So it's if we didn't have such a terrible June, we wouldn't be talking like that.
Right.
Even if we were 500 in June, we wouldn't be talking like that. But since we sucked ass in June, we have to talk like that. And yeah. So I mean, like I said, they're 6-10. I mean, 6-4 in their last 10. So there's good things going. But when you got Mo coming out saying things that he's saying, and Cardinals writers saying what they're saying, why does this team want to play for? I don't know. It's the same thing, different year.
Yep. Well, with that being said, it's that time. He's ready. So with that being said, y'all, it's the Platform Sports Talk Show. It is an honor to have this man, should I say, on this show. reached out to him, and he was gracious. He wasn't one of those guys like, you got to pay me a nice little fee to get me out. No, he was real cool. He was real humble, real approachable, and glad to have him on the show. This man's been on one-on-one ESPN for, I want to say, about almost 2 years now. He came on, I believe, doing a run with the Blues. Well, matter of fact, one-on-one ESPN should be responsible for the reason the Blues won, because when the Blues left KMOX and moved to one-on-one ESPN, all of a sudden it just like went crazy. And then there we go. And this man here has made an impact from the moment he stepped to one-on-one ESPN. I look forward to talking about his story. I have a feeling that he has a special moment that I want to bring up that he probably never foreseen, that probably may have been one of the highlights of his career so far, and talk about himself and his family, and of course about our local sports team. So without any further ado, let's welcome onto the platform Sports Talk Show 101, ESPN's own talented from the Midday BK and Ferrario show, Mr. Alex Ferrario. Ferrario, what's going on, man?
What's up, guys? How's it going, man? I appreciate the kind words. A couple of things. One, I'll take all of the credit in the world for that Blues Cup championship. That's perfectly fine. And two, I won't ask for any compensation unless you guys want to send me boxes of diapers for our baby, because apparently those are very expensive.
Hey, I totally get it, Joe. She's a new mommy. Her daughter is how old now, Joe?
She's 7 months.
Congrats.
Yeah, so
3 months ahead of me.
Yeah, so she probably saying the same thing. Hey, pass them on over here. Hold us down. I have a almost 20-year-old son, but I also have a almost should be 6 next month baby girl. So that stage of diapers, whoo! I'm glad that's over for sure now. It's locked up. Throw me the key. Don't get at me. I'm straight.
Nope.
Believe me, they tell me to cherish every moment of childhood and parenthood, but man, I am counting down the moments till the diapers go away and we get the potty training, because I am sick of those already.
My Lord. One of our faithful followers, Miss Alice Williams, says, "Welcome, Alex."
Definitely. Well, thank you guys so much for having me a part of it. You guys do phenomenal stuff here. I've seen the videos that you've done. The most recent one that you did with Anthony Stalter, of course, my teammate at 101 ESPN.
Right.
And I love the conversations that you guys have. I love the sports talk. And I know you guys tweet with me every once in a while throughout the midday shows on 101 ESPN. So I'm happy to come on and talk sports with you guys.
Yes, I would definitely admit that every day, all day, I have 101 ESPN in my ear, because, of course, that's how I know about certain things. I get the knowledge, I get the intel from all of y'all, from Randy, Michelle, of course, you and BK, and sometimes Tanner. Shouts out to him. And then, of course, Jamie, Brad, and Stalter. So just a great show, man, and been following y'all since pretty much day one. I had the pleasure, and I hope to get him on our show, Randy Carricker. But when the Rams were here in St. Louis, of course, and they had the training camps out in Earth City, I actually met the crew. The first time I met them, it was Randy, DeMarco, and Bob Ramsey.
Mm-hmm.
And I took a picture with them. I'm about to find it and post it one day. But I took a nice photo with them. It was very cool. Then I came back maybe the next year or 2 years later, and that's when it was Randy, DeMarco, and Chris Duncan.
Yeah.
So, of course, we all know about Chris Duncan passing away, and y'all did such a wonderful job that whole day being at the Bush Terrace, holding things down for Duncan. So kind of like surreal, like, man, I took a picture with him and he's gone. But yeah, I've definitely been a huge fan of 101 ESPN from the jump. Y'all meant so much to what I do with this show. So thank you all for once again being a part of the show and just doing what y'all doing.
Well, thank you for those kind words. I mean, honestly, I tell people all the time, we're just a bunch of idiots that talk sports 24/7. But what makes it fun and what makes it nothing like an actual job, but more so just kind of a hobby, are people like you that listen every day and give us all of the kind words and the feedback, and occasionally tell us we're idiots on the air, which is fine. That's how I think we thrive every day, is when we're told we're dumb every once in a while.
And what's cool also is because Joe and we work together, and I was training her on the department that we're in right now, and we talked about hockey and stuff. I said, well, I have a sports talk show. You should come on and whatever. So she used to be on like every other Wednesday, and now she's on pretty much every week. And I even have a ladies' night, which is every first Wednesday of the month. So like the show has just been so incredible. But I know that this show has been a lot because she's been able to meet people like yourself and Stalter and so many other people who we've had on the show over these last 4 years. But she's been on it's been your second year now, Joe, pretty much.
Yeah, my second year. You say you guys are idiots, but it's fun listening. It's almost like a celebrity type thing. Every time we have someone like Wheeler, Stalter, Ackerman, all those guys, it's fun talking to these people that we can chit chat with on Twitter.
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Yeah, I mean, believe me, I still have the fanboy moment every once in a while when I walk past Randy Carricker, because that's who I grew up listening to. And of course, when I met Randy back in high school, I think when I went out to lunch with him to kind of just talk with him, never in a million years I think I'd be one of his coworkers and working with him and doing shows every once in a while with him. So, I never feel like I'm a celebrity. I just feel like I'm one of you guys, just enjoying talking sports 24/7 and enjoying making it feel like we're just sitting at a bar talking Cardinals, talking Blues, talking whatever we decide to get into. But I appreciate the kind words.
Exactly. So let's go and get right on to it. Once again, this is the Platform Sports Talk Show, your Wednesday night sports delight. Alex, the question we always like to ask our guests is, when did you fall in love with sports?
Oh man, starting off with the fire questions right away. I love it. For me, I always tell people this, and it feels like it's sacrilegious to say in St. Louis that, you didn't grow up a Cardinals fan, which I did. I grew up enjoying the Cardinals, but I grew up a Blues fan. I mean, I was a diehard Blues fan. I think when I first got into sports, my dad tells the story all the time. I was about 5 years old, and my dad would go to hockey games occasionally, and it would be me and my 4-year-old sister. And he would kind of go back and forth with whoever he had tickets for one night. If I went, then my sister would go the next game. If she went, then I'd go the next game. Well, when I was about 5, my dad tells the story that I didn't want to go to the game, but my excuse to him was, no, I'll just go because I don't want her to go. And he laughs about it all the time. But for me, I feel like that's when I really fell in love with the game, going to those hockey games with my dad. I remember sitting in the stands for the early 2000 games in the President's Trophy year. I remember watching the team be disappointed in the playoffs. I remember Chris Pronger being traded away.
Oh, man.
I remember the ups and downs of Blues hockey, and I used to listen to Ken Wilson call the games on radio and television. Used to listen to Chris Kerber call the games on radio and television. So I'd say the love probably started when I was about 5. And then the more I went through grade school and high school, the more I realized that I could not play sports. I was terrible at them. And so I figured, well, you probably need to get into sports somehow, some other way. And that's when I started doing some broadcasting in high school. But, man, I mean, going to my first Blues game when I was young, going to my first Cardinals game when I was young. I was in the stands for, I believe it was the division game for the Rams on their trip to the Super Bowl when they beat the Seahawks. So I've just always been engulfed with sports around St. Louis. I've always loved watching the games and listening and reading up on stats and just kind of being a nut when it came to all kinds of random information. But the love definitely started with the Blues back when I was little.
So you said that you tried, but you failed in regards to pretty much being an athlete. So I take it was hockey that you first started out trying to do something. Is that correct?
Surprisingly, no. Hockey is an expensive sport, and my parents weren't going to waste money. Yeah, my parents weren't going to waste money on me playing hockey because I didn't stick with sports. I was a basketball player throughout my entire grade school and high school career. Was terrible at it, but at least I played. I didn't enjoy playing baseball when I was younger, so my parents said I just used to pick up dirt and throw it around, so I didn't stick with that, obviously. pretty much every sport that they try to get me involved with, I didn't want to participate in. So makes sense that they didn't get me into hockey. But what's so funny about it is as I got older, I wanted to play more and more sports. So now it's like I play rec softball every weekend. I did rec hockey, indoor and outdoor hockey for a while, pick up basketball, pick up football. Like I'll do it all now. But of course it's rec because I'm terrible at actually performing in those sports.
Yeah, and we
Okay, so what?
go ahead, Joe.
Did you participate in the home run derby?
Yeah, I participated in the home run derby. Well, I guess loose terms, I participated in the home run derby.
I had to tell my husband about that afterwards. I was giggling a little bit.
Yeah, it was pretty embarrassing. Look, the excuse I can give to everyone is I'm a contact hitter in softball, if anybody wants to believe that. But the pressure got to me in that home run derby. I didn't think I was going to do well. I thought I at least could hit one home run in that, so at least I could save face. But the pressure of watching Moon from the Rizzuto show on the point, who stepped up and was underplaying himself the entire time. He was like, man, I don't even know if I'm going to hit 5 of them. And I'm like, oh, okay. And he hit 11 of them. I'm like, really? Then I'm the first one to go. And then as soon as you miss that first softball, you basically are in your own head. And then on top of it, I had some kid who was chirping me in the right field bleachers the entire time. He was yelling the entire at-bat for me going, hey, Ferrario, this is why you're a hockey guy, because you're terrible at baseball. So it was pretty much a no-go for me. So I showed up, if that means anything, and I hit the wall twice, but I'm not a home run hitter, apparently.
See, if I were you, I would have took that softball, and wherever that kid was at, I would have threw it in the air. I would have hit that ball right to the kid. Like, say it to my face.
What was funny about it was after I hit, Riz from the Rizzuto show, he was hitting, and there were kids that were shagging balls in the outfield, and Riz hit one that was a wall scraper, and he had to be 12, 13, 14 years old. He was tall. He jumped up, and Jim Edmonds caught it right at the wall, and Riz stopped, and then he acted like he was going to run out to the field, and then afterwards he took the mic and he said, I'll meet you in the parking lot. And frankly, I wish I would have thought of that because that was hilarious. But let's be honest, I wouldn't have been successful in that area as well. So,
and speaking of which, you said the pressures of being around Moon and other guys, but wasn't Jim Edmonds there and other baseball players too?
Oh yeah, the embarrassment just got even better when Jim Edmonds, Brandon Moss, who we interviewed on the show the Friday before our softball home run derby. And Rick Ankiel was there and Adam Kennedy was there. The good news was that Jim Edmonds and I believe it was Adam Kennedy, they left after their at-bat, which was before my at-bat. So I think that they were gone before they saw how embarrassing I was. But Brandon Moss and Rick Ankiel saw how ugly that was. But hey, I wasn't the only one. BK stunk at it as well. So at least we can go down looking terrible together.
Right. Yeah, I was about to say, BK he didn't help out a whole lot either, because Stalter was telling us the story about what happened, pretty much round from round, and how him and BT had to hold things down. It was so bad that y'all had BT acting like he was Big Mac.
Oh yeah, BT and Stalter had to save the show. We were close to winning it because of those two, and it came down to the last at bat with Stalter, and I think he needed to hit 12, and he hit 10, and so of course. That makes it even worse for BK and I, because we're thinking, really, all we needed to do was contribute with one home run each, and it would have been a different outcome. But props to BK. BK said ahead of time, hey, I'm not going to hit any home runs. I'm terrible at this.
He did.
I thought I would at least hit one, and of course it hit the top of the wall and didn't go over. So God bless Stalter and BT for being as incredible as they were, because, man, they hit 20 combined between both of them and had to carry all the slack that we were terrible with.
Yeah. So, but the biggest thing is that y'all did such a great job of getting this event together, doing it for the cause that y'all did, and bringing a lot of people together. So, shouts out to what y'all do. I saw that y'all are going to be sponsoring Jason Tatum's camp. So, hopefully we can do something to assist in regards to that as well. Hopefully we can get some interviews with some people out there. We shall see. But shouts out to what y'all do for for St. Louis. So going back to your time as a kid, what school did you go to? The famous high school of the famous St. Louis question.
Yep.
What high school did you go to?
It's not a St. Louis sports talk show if you're going to ask that question.
Man.
I'll give it all to you, man. So I went to a grade school out in Arnold, Missouri, where I lived with my parents, obviously. And then I went to high school at Fox High School in Arnold as well. And then I did 2 years of community college out of Fox. I went to St. Louis Community College, obviously. And then I did my final 2 years on top of 2 years of a master's degree over at Lindenwood University.
Man, Lindenwood University came out with some legends. Danny Mack and Greg Amziger, and of course, yourself and I think Randy Carricker. So, man, it's a who's who list of Lindenwood. Also, my lady, shouts out to Jamie. She went to Lindenwood for a little time as well. So, a lot of greatness has came out of Lindenwood University. So, shouts out to y'all. So, you brought up earlier how you realized that sports wasn't going to be your thing, and you got into broadcasting. What was it about getting into the broadcasting that made you interested in going all the way through for it and doing it?
It really came down to I enjoyed talking sports. Like I always enjoyed talking about Blues games with my dad. Like I specifically remember riding home after games and we'd listen to the post-game show together. And then we would argue back and forth about, what the Blues did and what they didn't do. And, Cardinal season, we'd do the same thing. Rams, we'd do the same thing. And the more I thought about it, it's like, man, I really enjoy talking sports. And so that kind of got into it. And, for me, it started with play-by-play. I didn't want to do talk shows. I wanted to be a play-by-play guy for hockey. Like that was my number one thing. But to get into it, you obviously have to make connections. So I started off kind of being introduced to Jeremy Rutherford, the Blues beat writer at the time for the Post-Dispatch. He and his wife got married by my pastor at the time. So that's how I made the connection. My pastor knew I wanted to get into it. And so he introduced me to JR, and JR took me down to a Blues game to shadow him. So that was my first experience back in high school of going to a Blues game. And I'll never forget, he gave me his microphone and he said, go in the locker room and ask some questions. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, okay. So went into the locker room and I asked, I think it was Andy McDonald a question. And, Andy McDonald.
Oh, hold on, Alex. We can't hear you for a second. Something just happened to your microphone. Nope, can't hear you.
How about now, guys?
Now we can hear you.
There you go. Technology at its finest.
Gotta love it.
I apologize.
Gotta love it.
But anyway, so Jeremy Rutherford was one that got me into it. And then from there, it turned into JR got me an internship with a radio station in St. Louis. That internship led to a meeting with Chris Kerber, and then I got a booth assistantship with Chris Kerber. And again, at the time, I wanted to do play-by-play. So I got the internship with Curbs and the Blues, trying to work on my play-by-play skills while I was going to Lindenwood. And while I was at Lindenwood and while I was doing the internship, KMOX offered me a job to kind of be a sports producer / kind of intern for them. And then that turned into a weekend producing job, which turned into a sports producing job, which turned into me hosting Blues pre and post on the weekend. So long story short, what got me into it was I wanted to do play-by-play. Jeremy Rutherford was able to help me make the connection with Chris Kerber. And then play-by-play started to become kind of a distant dream for me because I started to be around sports talk. And I'm like, man, I really enjoy this while I was attending Lindenwood. And then Sports Talk was just the avenue that opened up for me, and I kind of jumped on board with that and never looked back.
So it pretty much started off first as you being a producer, then graduating up to, like you said, announcer and trying to do play-by-play, and then being on-air personality as what you're doing now.
Yeah, unfortunately, and I know a lot of kids that are probably listening or young guys who are in college or girls that are listening, and they're thinking, work for free? Are you kidding me? That was my entire, high school and first 3 years of college life was internships. I had an internship, like I said, at a local radio station for 2 years, being kind of I guess I was a podcaster. I would record the show, podcast it, and that would be my duties. I'd leave and then I'd come back and do it the next day. Did the internship with Chris Kerber in the Blues for 4 years, where I was at all of the Blues games, just working up in the booth, helping Curbs and Kelly Chase with what they needed, and then being down in the locker room getting audio. And then I started off my first year at KMOX as kind of an intern working, just cutting up audio and things like that. But that essentially turned into a producing job on the weekend, which wasn't even sports shows. It was a news show that I was a producer for. Did that for about 6 months, and then that turned into me getting an opportunity to be on air. Shout out to my good buddy Mike Claiborne. Mike Claiborne was the one who essentially saw me, and he was like, hey, man, you're kind of good at this. He hooked me up with the program director, and then they started to let me kind of get some reps on air.
It's amazing how you brought up Mike Claiborne, because we had him on about a month ago, and we had him on along with previously we had Kevin Wheeler, and I'm trying to think who else was it from KMOX that we had on, Joe, recently. But
there's Tom Ackerman.
Yeah, there you go, Tom Ackerman. So just the mention of saying KMOX and you having that opportunity, how big of a deal was it to have a legendary station like that provide you an opportunity to pretty much get started and develop to the man that you are now in radio?
Oh, I tell people all the time, I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for those people at KMOX. You know, it's crazy how all of the stepping stones I've gone through, all of the big time St. Louis people. You know, I started off, as I mentioned, with Jeremy Rutherford, who, you know, he's number one on the list for me of I wouldn't be here today because JR was the one that got me into this business. JR got me an internship with 590, the local station at the time in high school, and I worked with Frank Cusimano and Martin Kilcoyne, did their podcasting. That led me to the internship with the Blues, where I met Chris Kerber and Kelly Chase and all of those individuals. And I also met Randy Carricker at the time because he was a good buddy of JR's. And then all of that leads me to the KMOX position. And honestly, I say to repeat myself, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Kevin Wheeler, Tom Ackerman, Steve Moore, the program director there, Ben Boyd, the executive producer there, and Mike Claiborne. I mean, those guys, all of them, they saw something in a college kid who had no experience other than college radio on the air. And they said, man, you got something here. Like my first job at KMOX was a intern / producer for Kevin Wheeler for Sports Open Line. So I was working with Ben Boyd to put stuff together for Kevin Wheeler, you know, and then at the time I would help produce shows for Mike Claiborne that weren't even sports on Sundays. He used to do a show called At Your Service, where it was Mike Claiborne talking news, talking current events, talking books, like whatever he was interested in, that's what he got into. I was the producer for that. And the more I just talked with Mike Claiborne, Claves was like, hey, you know, are you interested in this? I told him, this is what I want to do. And Claves is like, okay, great. And then so he kind of got me hooked up with what they called at the time a sports apprenticeship, where I was essentially helping Ben Boyd and the sports guys with audio, content for shows, booking guests, and things like that. Those guys were the ones that essentially got me to the role that I was doing the weekend pre and post for the Cardinals and Blues. You know, because Mike Claiborne said, hey, this guy's good enough to do pre and post for the Cardinals. And hey, this guy's good enough to do pre and post for the Blues. And when Kevin Wheeler went to 101 ESPN at the time, and they had Chris Raby, who was the full-time guy there, you know, Tom Ackerman and Mike Claiborne, they were the ones that say, okay, this is your shot. And I took it and I ran with it.
Nice. So, and how long have you been a part of KMOX radio?
So I was with KMOX. I think I was hired back in 2000 and I want to say 2015. Man,
okay.
It's crazy how far back that was. But 2015, when I was still in college, was when I was at KMOX, and I worked at KMOX until 2019 when I got the job at 101 ESPN. So I was there for about 4 or 5 years, and then I've been with 101 ESPN for about 2 years.
Nice. And Joe, did you have any questions for him before I continue?
No, it's just crazy hearing all these different names that like we've got, you know, an honor to talk to most of them. You know, it's just crazy. Everyone's linked up somehow, some way. Before you continue, my Uncle Jody said Paul Correa, as I hear you talk about earlier, and then his buddy Aaron Droy said hi. So hi.
I love it. That's awesome. Yeah. Fun story of Paul Correa. I brag to people all the time. So I got to interview him when he got into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Was my first opportunity interviewing him, and I loved Paul Correa. Like he was one of my favorites, watching him with Anaheim, the Mighty Ducks at the time, and then when he signed with the Blues. So I interviewed him when he went into the Hockey Hall of Fame, and I still tell people to this day, I brag about it. I made Paul Kariya laugh with one of my jokes. So I'll hang my hat on that one for now.
Yeah, he was a fun guy to watch.
Let's see. Yeah. I'm still looking because it wasn't Paul Kariya. He played during the same time with David Backus and Oshie and all them. He was a golly. He was a center that people had a lot of expectation. And Ferrario, you know who I'm talking about too. If I think about it, I want to say he was a lefty, but he had a lot of high expectations, but he never met them expectations. And he hoped for a bigger paycheck deal, but the Blues like, no, you ain't gonna sign with us. We gonna it'll come to me very soon.
Stastny?
No, not Stastny, but keep on going though.
Berglund?
That's it. Berglund.
Patrick Berglund?
Patrick Berglund.
Oh, God.
That's who it was.
Got a field day right there. That's his guy.
Yeah, Patrick Berglund, man. Believe me, I was in the same spot as your uncle. I mean, before I even worked for the Blues was when the Blues drafted Patrick Berglund. And when I told you guys that my dad and I used to talk all the time of like, we'd go back and forth of what the problem for the Blues were and how to fix it, like pre-sports talk. We used to talk all the time about Patrick Berglund. And I used to be like, all right, Patrick Berglund, he's going to be the savior. He's going to win the cup for the Blues. And, of course, it just never worked out for Patrick Berglund, although a really good player at the time for the Blues. But unfortunate way to end it. But I guess you can't complain too much because essentially he was tied to the Blues winning a Stanley Cup.
Exactly. And, you know, he kind of – his expectation put me in the same mindset of we call Mark Turgeon.
Oh, yeah, Pierre Turgeon.
I'm sorry, Pierre Turgeon. Sorry about that. You know, what's number 77? Was that right?
Yep.
And I was like, man, you know, this dude here, he kind of like a little, you know, upcoming dude. He may win us a title too. You know, of course, it didn't happen. We had a little bad luck thanks to the Avalanche and them other teams during them years. But he was someone else who I thought, you know, was going to help us over the hump. But
yeah, Pierre Turgeon, one of my favorite Blues of all time. Got to interview him during the alumni game during the Winter Classic, and one of the nicest guys ever. But Pierre Turgeon, his goal in the playoffs against the Arizona Coyotes, I still to this day imitate that call from Ken Wilson. Pierre Turgeon, overtime game winner. Like, I still mimic that call. And I told Turgeon that. And, of course, you know, he just smiles and laughs. But he was one of my favorite all-time Blues players. And, yeah, unfortunate that he never got to win the cup here in St. Louis because, man, was he a part of some good teams.
Nice. So tell us about that process that was going on in your mind. You with KMOX, staying looking good, then all of a sudden you're hearing the Blues are being sold to 101 ESPN, and then you eventually getting that job at 101 ESPN. Just tell us about that process of what you were going through. Did you have any certain nerves or expectations when you was going to 101 ESPN? Because I know you heard how dominant it is on the FM side in St. Louis and pretty much just dominant all around the area. But just that transition from KMOX to 101 ESPN.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting how it worked, too, because at the time, I mean, I loved what I was doing at KMOX. My ultimate goal was to be the main sports host for KMOX. You know, because Chris Raby at the time when I was there, I was the weekend guy. I did pre and post for the Blues and Cardinals on Saturdays, Sundays. And then when Raby was either off or when he was working Cardinals games, I would do Blues games. So we kind of went back and forth, but he was the full-time guy. And I was only part-time. So when the rumbling started that they were going to the Blues, you know, I was kind of worried. Like, I was talking with my wife at the time, and we were like, man, I might have to look for another job because, you know, if the Blues leave, KMOX isn't going to need two sports hosts. Like, they're going to have one guy who does Cardinal seasons, and then in the off season, he'll do Sports Open Lines. So I was worried. And again, like, I was a big Blues guy, so I loved the Blues. And at the time, you know, I was already very familiar with Chris Kerber because I did internships with him, and he was part of the reason why I was getting to do pre and post on the weekend because Kerbs was the one that told the program director at KMOX, like, hey, Ferrario's good for this. Let's put him on the air. So, you know, Kerbs and I had a conversation, and Kerbs just told me, he's like, look, they're going to 101 ESPN. I think you'd be great as the full-time pre- and post-game guy because they're going to need a full-time pre- and post-game guy. So he told me to look into it. So, you know, in this business, you always have to kind of be looking for what's next. And look, I mean, I didn't want to leave KMOX. I loved KMOX, but the opportunity to be a full-time pre- and post-game guy for the Blues was a dream for me. And so I contacted the program director at 101 and just said, look, I don't know if you guys are looking to hire somebody. but if the Blues come over here, I'd love to be a part of this. And, of course, because of everything that's going on, they can't talk. Like, they can't tell me, oh, yeah, the Blues are going to be here. We'll hire you. All they would tell me is, well, we don't know if the Blues are going to come. If they come, we'll contact you. And so it was an entire season of, well, what the heck is going to happen? But thank God that I was distracted by a Stanley Cup because I didn't have to sit there and panic about it. So, as things kind of started progressing and 101 looks to be a closer deal, I was contacted by their program director at the time. And he just said, look, it's looking like the Blues are going to come over here and we'd love to hire you if that is the case. And so we had to wait until the season ended, of course, and then they had to wait until the contract was signed. But then I think it was July of 2019, after the celebration, after the parade, after everything was completed, they signed the contract, and then they told me that, hey, they're going to hire me. And so I unfortunately turned in my 2 weeks notice with KMOX at the time, and then started in August with 101 ESPN. But I mean, I'm truly blessed to have the opportunity to do this, to where the Blues and Chris Kerber wanted me to be the main pre and post game guy, because there's so many talented people at 101 ESPN that could have been doing that. And they looked to me. But I'm also blessed with the opportunity for KMOX because, one, I would have never been able to follow the Blues to 101 ESPN if I wasn't given the opportunity to be the weekend guy. And on top of it, I'll never forget the conversations that I had with Tom Ackerman, Mike Claiborne, Steve Moore, Ben Boyd. They all were the ones that told me, you need to take this job because you can't improve in this business by staying put. You always have to look for the next opportunity. And to hear that from your employer that, hey, go take this job because it's great for your career, that means a hell of a lot to me. So, God bless Steve Moore and Mike Claiborne and Tom Ackerman and Ben Boyd at KMOX to push me in the direction to take this 101 ESPN opportunity. And then, like I said, to be able to get the opportunity and start with just the Blues and then turn that into a Monday through Friday sports talk opportunity. I mean, that's a dream come true for me.
And I'm glad that you said that about just not being stagnant, staying in one place. I've always been told from years back, don't be comfortable just being content. You know what I'm saying? Okay, you met one goal, now let's find a different goal and let's see if you can continue with that. Just keep pushing yourself. So for those who are watching right now, hopefully what Ferrario was saying right now hits home to you. You take that, and for whatever that you're doing, whether it's in your job, your career, something that you want to make a career, don't stay stagnant. Continue to find other ways to improve in other areas so you can get even more notice than just one thing. So appreciate that. I know Joe.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Real quick. I'll just tell you this too. I mean, kind of a behind the scenes look. Like, it's no secret that sports talk radio or whatever it is, it's not a money making career. Like, you're not breaking the bank doing what you're doing. I mean, there's a lot of grinding that goes into this. When I was at KMOX, I was a part-time employee. I was working while I was doing pre and post on the weekends and filling in Monday through Fridays. I was working a pest control job for my dad's pest control company. So I was doing that in the daytime, Monday through Friday. And in the middle of my days during the Blues Stanley Cup run, I would stop doing pest control. I would go down to the Blues practice. I'd cover the team for practice, send the audio back to KMOX, go back out to do pest control until about 4 o'clock, come home, shower, change, and then go downtown and be at the Blues game. So, I mean, there were times before I got the 101 job that I contemplated getting out of the business. I mean, I was talking about going back to school because, on top of loving what I'm doing, I also wanted to be a dad, and I also wanted to start a family with my wife. And so we were talking. It's like, look, financially, I might have to get out of this. But, I got really lucky and I got really blessed that the opportunity arose to take on 101 ESPN. So, yeah, I mean, you can't stay stagnant, man. If you love something, you got to continue to try and push and grind for it. But any opportunities that present yourself, it may not look like the right decision, but you got to take advantage of it and turn that into something.
Most definitely. Before we continue, Joe, I know we have a few comments starting off with Miss Williams. You can go ahead and go over those for me real quick.
Oh, all right. Hold on, let me go to my phone. She said internships, paid or not, are crucial to getting experience while still in college. So you have something to put on a resume when you graduate. And then my Uncle Joey was just talking about Berglund about he's a sexy Swede.
Oh Lord.
I think the entire locker room called him that too because he was the best dressed guy in that team. My man would come out of a locker room afterwards, and it'd be a home game. He's just going back to his house, and he'd be dressed up in like a Louis Vuitton suit and be like, "Man, Dr. Berglund knows what's up."
And then Aaron DeRoy was saying, get a big center, they said, it'll take you over the top, they said. And then he said Pierre Turgeon tore it up in the Winter Classic alumni game.
That's right. I think he had a goal and 2 assists, or 2 goals and an assist, something like that. I got to do pre and post for that game. I mean, I nerded out getting to call all of those guys' names and things like that. Oh man, that was probably one of the highlights of my career, being able to watch that, because that was my entire childhood on the ice.
Okay, yeah.
That was the game we could afford. We couldn't afford the actual Winter Classic game. We afford the Winter Classic alumni game, but it was still blast. It was still fun, also, just to experience that down there.
Definitely.
And yeah, speaking of which, just stay on that real quick. The Winter Classic. Just tell us from your perspective, just how incredible it was to have that here at Busch Stadium when we had it.
Oh my gosh! In my opinion, that is what put the Blues back on the national map in terms of hockey. Up until that point, the Blues were rebuilding. Like, I mean, remember, once they traded Chris Pronger in that post-lockout of 2004, I remember going to those games with my dad, and like, we were probably one of maybe like 8,000 in the building. Like, nobody wanted to go to Blues games because they were rebuilding. And that was the Dave Checketts era. And then when Tom Stillman purchased the team and they started to trend in the right direction, they started to kind of put themselves back on the map. But in my opinion, that Winter Classic was the first time that everybody was like, "Oh, the Blues are a real deal." I mean, I remember doing pregame on KMOX at the time inside Busch Stadium with Mike Claiborne and Tom Ackerman, and I mean, it was shoulder to shoulder. And then to be in Busch Stadium for those games, I mean, it was just incredible what the city of St. Louis accomplished with that. Like, to be able to sell that out in St. Louis in December, or January, when everyone calls it a baseball town. And I mean, then on top of it, to have the national recognition of the names that played in that alumni game. I mean, think about it. Wayne Gretzky came to St. Louis to play in that game. And I understand, he lives in St. Louis, right? He married a St. Louis girl. But he only played here for a couple of months.
Right.
And he's considered an alumni of the Blues.
Right.
Chris Pronger, Al McInnes, Brett Hall, Keith Tkachuk, Bernie Fedork. I mean, go through the list of the Hall of Famers that suited up for that game. That's where people are like, oh, man, Blues know what they're doing. And then the actual Winter Classic game, because that was still in the peak time of the Chicago Blackhawks.
Right.
And the Blues were able to beat them in that game. Tarasenko, Alex Pietrangelo. In my opinion, that's what basically told the National Hockey League, hey, the Blues are about to be something big. And then lo and behold, look what happens. They go to that Winter Classic. Then they make a run to the conference final that year where they lose to the San Jose Sharks. They essentially go on to win the Stanley Cup. But that's where the Blues really started that big picture of, okay, we're going to compete with this being a baseball town. It was that year of the Winter Classic. And I still remember it to this day. I mean, what an atmosphere, what a picture. I mean, I still can't get over the fact that actually happened here.
And
my husband and I went to the game where they announced that they were going to be doing that. And they had like the video of Senko walking up the dugout steps or whatever.
Right.
Sometimes I watch that just to get myself jazzed because I love it so much. But,
no, I'll never forget.
It was so exciting.
Curbs gave us a heads up because we were doing I think it was a weekend game if I'm not mistaken, and I was doing pre and post for it. And they didn't tell us beforehand like, hey, this is going to happen. So like I have my whole pre and post game scheduled, and then of course that breaks, and Curbs told us that the night we got to the rink. So I usually got to the rink like 2 hours before the puck drop. And so I'd be down there and I'd get set for pregame and be like, hey, just so you know, this is going to be announced in just a bit during the game. So make sure you're ready. And I'm like, oh, how do you hold on to this secret? And so, of course, they announced it. But I remember being in that building, too. And when they showed that video, man, I don't remember a building being that loud until the Blues beat the Blackhawks in the playoffs.
And going back to Wayne Gretzky, how you were saying how they show him so much love for him being around us for a few months. It's like, to me, I could be wrong, but it's like the Blues show him so much love more than the Rangers and the Oilers and wherever the team that he played with for a period of time. it's just how St. Louis does it. We do it different. We do it special. That's why we are known nationally as pretty much the best sports town there is. So going back to the transition from KMOX to 101 ESPN, I noticed that pretty much when you arrived to 101 ESPN, like you said before, it was pre and post game for Blues. But looks like you were also starting like a rover. You'll kind of go from either one show to maybe replace somebody else for the day or hop on this show, whatever. Especially when you started when Stalter still had the midday and he was with Rivers, and Rivers was gone a lot because he had his other obligations during that time. So you kind of took over. But tell us about that period where you was pretty much didn't have a straight defined role. You was pretty much going to fill in different spots, but you were still getting everybody to know about you on 101 ESPN.
Yeah, so I got there in August before the season started, of course, and preseason starts late September, early October, then the season starts in October. So when I started there, I wasn't doing anything. Like I just come to work and just sit there. And I that's not me. Like I need to be working nonstop. Like I need to be doing something. I don't just like sitting around and not having anything to do. And so, I talked to the program director at the time and I'm like, look, I love doing pre and post. Like, this is why you brought me here. But I have other goals. Like I want to be on the radio. I want to do shows here and there. And they told me too, when they hired me, like, hey, you'll fill in because they've heard me host shows before at KMOX and like, you'll be able to fill in when guys are out or if we need you here and there, and you'll be a guest host every once in a while once Blue season's going on. And I'm like, that's awesome. And so started the season in October. And then I think the first time I actually got to join a show was when Bernie Miklasz was out, because he was out in November or December of that year.
Yeah.
He was out with a medical issue. And so he was gone for like a week. And they were like, hey, do you want to do this? And I'm like, heck yeah, I want to do this. So I was guest hosting for Bernie Miklasz at the time, and that was kind of my first taste of it. But they had me as a guest on Bernie's show and on Stalter and Rivers and on the Fast Lane once Blue season was going on, and I was just doing pre and post at the time. But then the big hit was when Jamie Rivers was gone because he was trying to get his work visa figured out with Canada and the U.S., and it was a long process that I don't think he anticipated. And I think he was gone for like 2 months, and so at the time, Anthony Stalter was like, well, what the heck am I going to do? I can't do a show for 3 hours by myself. I mean, Stalter can because he's an incredible host. But then they shifted Michelle Smallman into that because she was doing social media at the time. And then they were like, hey, do you want to do this? I'm like, heck yes, please. Like, let me do this. And so we called ourselves the Three Raviolis for a while because, of course, all three of us are Italian. But, yeah, I got to do that for like 2 months. And, man, I loved every second of it. And it was so funny because throughout that time, I'm doing pre and post for the Blues. So like every other night, it's 6 o'clock pregame, 7 o'clock puck drop, and I'm working until about 11 o'clock at night with the postgame shows. And then I'd wake up and I'd go do Bernie's show, or I'd wake up and I'd be in there the next day and I'd be doing Stalter and Rivers with Smallman and Stalter. And people would be like, man, do you ever sleep? And I'm like, heck no, man, I've been wanting this job. Like, this is what I've been wanting to do forever, full time on the radio. Like, I didn't have a kid at the time. My wife and I were married. My wife was working a lot because she worked at a salon. And so like, I was like, man, this is all I want to do. And so I just jumped into it, full blast, didn't look back with it, and just started to do anything they wanted to do. And for anybody who's watching or listening and thinking about getting into broadcast, like that's another thing for me. I never said no. Like when I got the job at 101, when I got the job at KMOX, I never said no. Like, first thing they did for KMOX with me was I filled in for the Mark Reardon show. I was a producer for a week. And I don't know, like I know news, but like I'm not into politics. I'm not into current events. And I was running the board and producing that show. So I never said no to an opportunity. And I think that's what essentially happened with 101. When Bernie was out, when Anthony needed somebody to help, when the Fast Lane needed people because guys were gone or guys didn't have an extra host, I was the one that raised my hand immediately and said, yep, I'll do it. No big deal. I wouldn't be here without that mindset of never saying no for any opportunity that arose.
Nice. I see you have another comment. Is that Iran or Aaron?
It's Aaron.
Oh, I'm sorry, Aaron. Just want to. Hey, Ron. Now let me stop playing.
Hey, Ron.
He says that he had all of Section 332 to himself for a couple seasons after the lockout. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you did, because that was a crazy time for NHL when I think that was around the time where the Blues were actually like something looked promising. Then all of a sudden, boom, lockout. Yep. And that really put the NHL in a bad place. I think they lost the contract with ESPN at that time. And so you only had pretty much, two sources, either locally, back then, Fox Sports, now, of course, Bally, then NBC picked them up and everything. But back then, hockey was on NHL on Fox and ESPN and this station here and stuff like that. So the strike or lockout at that time just did not help out in regards to the NHL. And, of course, for our Blues at that moment, to realize that for a whole season, you can't even watch, go to the Scott trade at that time and, watching Blues hockey. But going back to just broadcasting in general, who would you say was some of your influences that you was getting up there in the ranks?
Well, for me, Ken Wilson, I used to watch those games religiously. Like every season, every other night, I would make it an appointment to be in front of that television for the games. So, I grew up listening to Ken Wilson call those hockey games. Jack Buck, obviously, like I listened to him when I was younger with Cardinals. And, as crazy as it sounds, Chris Kerber. Because Ken Wilson, the transition when he was television, and then when Curbs took over on the radio side, like I was listening to those games. So those were my biggest influences. And I listened to everybody. Like I used to love listening to Al Michaels call games for the Cincinnati Reds. And of course, the Miracle on Ice. I still listen to that all the time with Al Michaels on the call. Mike Shannon, of course, here in St. Louis. It was really all of the local broadcasters I'd be listening to 24/7. And at the time, I didn't know where I wanted to go with it. Wanted to do play-by-play, but then there was the sports talk. So I'd be listening to Kevin Wheeler talk sports and Scott Warman talk sports and Mike Claiborne and Tom Ackerman. But I'd watch television news as well. So I'd watch Frank Cusimano on Channel 5 all the time. I'd watch Mike Bush all the time. So I was kind of dabbling in all of it. And, pretty much anybody I could listen to, I'm like, okay, I'm buying in on this. But I would say the main influencers for me when I was growing up, what really got me into broadcasting was Chris Kerber, Dan McLaughlin, Jack Buck, and then, of course, Ken Wilson, because it was that transition from one group to the other. That's who I listened to all the time.
Oh, baby.
And he ruined it for everybody because nobody can ever come up with a better kind of calling card than "Oh, baby." And I've interviewed Ken Wilson multiple times, and I've told him, like, you have ruined it for everybody. But then, of course, it's like, Chris Kerber's got an incredible one. You can bring out the Zambonis. Like, it's just awesome to have those. But, yeah, Ken Wilson, he set the standard in terms of a calling card when you're a broadcaster because that is the ultimate number one.
Yeah, most definitely. Shouts out to him. Once again, this is the Platform Sports Talk Show. I am your boy Smooth along with
Jobo.
And we have a special guest for 1-to-1 ESPN.
Alex Ferrario.
There you go. He's part of the show. It's official now.
I need a better nickname than that. You give me a little time. I'm gonna get a better nickname because you guys got some good names.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and add on our co-host. She just got done having a COVID test done just for precautionary reasons, but she's on now. Make sure that she has a camera facing her. Looks like she got it facing the back seat of a car. So we got to make sure that she gets the camera right first. Then we can bring on our co-host, Bunny. Let me go ahead and see what's happening. Bunny, what's happening?
Good evening, good evening, good evening.
She is multitasking. So just for you know, disclaimer, we ain't forced her to get on now while she's driving and trying to be on the show at the same time, but she loves the show. She's so dedicated. So, Bunny, you have Mr. Alex Ferrario on right now. What's happening?
What's going on, buddy?
Not a whole lot. It's great to have you hop on with us. Perfect timing. I hope the COVID test went well.
Yes, COVID test is negative. It was precautionary because I was around someone that tested positive, but I am negative.
Love to hear it. Love to hear it.
What you eating on right now, boy?
Other
It
than
look kind of good.
it's only 90 degrees out here, guys, at 8:30 at night, so I'm eating ice cream. kind of keep it cool, like the little ball machine keeps the ring smooth, or the ice cream keeps the body smooth.
Well, it's good. I know that last week, like you said before, that you was out of town doing your thing. So how everything go in A-Town, ATL?
Everything was good. I didn't wear my Cardinals gear. Usually I like to wear Cardinals at the airport because I love to get people pushback when they come to me crazy. I forgot. But I did have my St. Louis book bag, but it's still not the same. I needed a Cardinals logo, but But everything was good.
Nice.
Back here, been in super heat. Funny thing, last week I did this, the same thing this week. So, talking to my manager, like I talk to my manager at work like every couple of days. Well, not at work in person, but online. And he's a baseball coach for his son's baseball team, but he also does hockey. And so I told him, let me decide your world because I'm used to basketball, football, and baseball, let me say that too, but not hockey. So today we were talking, and he was telling me about his son's team, so I told him he was going to be our guest tonight. So I said, I'm going to bring this up to you since he knows a lot about hockey, and his son plays, in their 10 and 12. So what do you think about these teams that have traveling hockey teams? You know how you have traveling baseball clubs and basketball? And I asked about hockey because he told me how expensive it could be with these young kids on these traveling hockey clubs. So I'm wondering, what's your thoughts today? Find a way to make it cheaper, or be able to play if you can pay? Because I couldn't believe how many thousands of dollars you said it cost to be on these teams.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's insane how expensive hockey is. But man, I think nobody's doing it better than what St. Louis is because they are making hockey affordable for kids to get involved with it. I work, of course, with Jamie Rivers, and he's got a great company called Synergy Hockey that basically is a training for young kids and for guys who are in hockey. And of course, he works with guys who made it into the NHL. But they have so many more rinks now that's available. But yeah, I mean, that's why I didn't get into hockey because it was so expensive. And I know a lot of people now are trying to kind of fix the facilities to where kids can get involved with it because it's so expensive. But man, God bless the parents that do that traveling hockey with their kids that are involved with it because that is a lot of waking up super early and being gone for a long period of time. But those kids that are involved with it and the parents that are involved with it, man, they got a passion for it, and I give them props for it because sooner or later I'm going to be involved with that sooner or later with my daughter. I don't know what she's going to get into, but it'll be something.
And I think yesterday I even seen a post from Jamie Rivers that he had the Kachuk brothers at an event. Was that yesterday?
Yeah. It was at his Synergy Hockey event. They had him come in, or both of them come in, Brady and Matthew, and they spoke with the group of kids. And he does that all the time. He works with those guys in the off season that come in, and of course, there's a lot of St. Louis kids now that are in the NHL that come back and do some working out with Jamie Rivers and the Blues players that are around here. But yeah, they were in town. I think it was yesterday talking to those kids.
Nice. That's dope.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's definitely dope. So definitely keep that up. We definitely appreciate it. Do you feel that overall kids are wanted to play hockey more over these last few years, especially since the Blues, won a couple years ago? Do you feel like there's more anticipation of kids wanting to get into the sport? We know how it is with football and basketball.
Right.
Baseball is kind of but what about hockey? Because the game of hockey itself is kind of to me, like NASCAR a little bit, how we're trying to find the right representation to market the game better. How is it going now, do you feel, overall, and then especially locally here in St. Louis?
I think it's getting a lot bigger. I mean, if you think about it, and we talked a while ago about the Winter Classic and kind of how that put the St. Louis kind of on the map. This goes back to the Brett Hall era that started to get people into hockey. But I really think that, when the Blues started to have that success and turnaround in the mid 2010s, and they went to the Winter Classic. They beat the Blackhawks. They went to the conference final. They win the cup. That was really what started turning hockey up even higher. And I remember going to, the Boys and Girls Club here in St. Louis when they opened up a rink, and I remember Ryan Reeves being there and Brett Hall, so many kids and families that were out there for that game just to witness the rink opening up for kids to play on. They've opened up numerous rinks around the area, and then now that you've got the Centene Community Ice Center, I don't know if all of you have been out there or not, but what an incredible facility that the community put together and the Blues were a part of. Guys, those rinks are filled non-stop. I mean, they have pickup games, they have training sessions, they have camps in the off-season, and there are people there all the time. So I really think St. Louis is a hotbed right now for the game of hockey for kids that are wanting to get into it. A lot of that's due to the Blues' success. A lot of that is due to St. Louis kids that made it into the NHL. We all remember that draft where, what was it, 6 guys that were St. Louis natives were drafted in the first round. So I wouldn't be surprised if more and more kids from St. Louis start ending up playing pro hockey or, junior hockey because of what they have done over the last 10 to 15 years. And a lot of that is because of the Blues players and the Blues organization for getting kids involved with hockey.
Nice. So this is a question that I asked Mike Claiborne, and he gave us a few great stories. And I believe Starter did too, but definitely want to ask this to you. Since you have been in the broadcasting game, either producing or, like you said, doing broadcasting or trying to do play-by-play, has there been that one celebrity or athlete that you met that you was like, wow, like I straight made it, this is cool right here?
Wow, that's a great question because there are so many of them, and I can only imagine who Mike Claiborne and Anthony Stelter said because Mike Claiborne's met everybody. I've heard all of the stories. Man, for me, I feel like every athlete I meet, whether it be current or past, I'm thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm talking to you because you're that fan. Like you don't get into sports unless you're a fan. So it's like anytime you get the opportunity to, that always jumps out to you. A couple of them for me, the first time I met Brett Hall, I mean, I about lost it. And Al McInnes was another one. Al McInnes was my favorite player growing up. Weird story about it. I used to think Al was short for Alex, and that's why I loved the guy. It took me a while before I found out his actual name was Alan, and I'm like, oh, well, that sucks. But my dad used to call me Al, so I just gravitated towards Al McInnes. So the first time I got to talk to him was incredible. Marty Brodeur was another one that it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm talking to you. Jim Edmonds, the first time I was able to meet him and have him a part of a pre and post game for the Cardinals. But the one that will never go away from me, and I've told the story on the air before, but it's when I met Lou Brock for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I was an intern at KMOX at the time. Like, this was probably my first month at KMOX, and Tom Ackerman had reached out to me, and he said, hey, Lou is doing a charity event over at Busch Stadium. Take a microphone, go over there, get a couple minutes with him. We'll put it on Sports Open Line tonight. So I'm like, heck yes, let's do this. So I rushed over to Busch Stadium. It was all ready. I mean, I had my notebook ready to go with questions for Lou Brock. And I was so nervous because this was the first time I was ever meeting like a legend in sports. Went in, started to talk to Lou, did the interview, probably about 8 to 10 minutes with Lou Brock, and really wonderful man. Gave me some great answers. And then after the interview, wrapped it up, shook his hand, said, Lou, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. He looked at me and he said, wonderful job, Alex. Only thing I got to tell you is I'm not Bob Gibson. And I looked at him and I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, you called me Bob Gibson in that interview. And I'm like, no, I didn't. And he laughed. He goes, yeah, you did. And we listened to it. And lo and behold, I kept calling him Mr. Gibson, Mr. Gibson, Mr. Gibson, with the full knowledge that I'm talking to Lou Brock. But I got so nervous that I called him Bob Gibson. But to this day, I tell the story about him because, God bless Lou Brock, because he saw a very nervous broadcaster knew I was with KMOX, let me did the whole interview, gave me wonderful answers, and then corrected me afterwards because he knew if he would have stopped me, I would have just been done for. But that's one of my favorite stories about Lou Brock and just getting to meet somebody, because it just goes to show, they always say never meet your heroes because you're worried to. That was the moment that it's like, no, you're supposed to, because Lou Brock was one of a kind to be able to give that kind of gratitude to a young kid. So that would probably be the one that sticks out to me the most.
So would you say you were as red as your shirt when that happened?
Oh yeah. Honestly, I don't even know if I was red. I think all of the blood exited my body. I probably looked like a ghost because I couldn't believe that I just did that in front of him. It was for the home of the Cardinals. Like, really? Like, I'm a St. Louis kid. I know that I'm talking to Lou Brock, and I had all of my questions written out, and I just called him the wrong name, and I was so ashamed of myself. But man, he was so good. I'll never forget. I got in my car, I drove home, and I called my dad, and I just told him. My dad's like, "I can't believe you did that." I'm like, "I can't believe it either." And thank God that I deleted that interview so fast that nobody would ever have that evidence of me embarrassing myself with Lou Brock. So that'll just be the story that Lou and I will always have.
Nice. And definitely rest in peace to Lou and to Bob Gibson, in which the Cardinals did announce recently that they will be honoring both legends very soon. So look forward to that. Also look forward to what they're doing for the 10-year anniversary of the 2011 team. They're going to have a who's who of guys coming in during that Padres series. And to have Tatis Jr. and Machado and Pham for the first time, Pham come back to St. Louis, I got to be at one of them games, man, because that's going to be amazing for St. Louis. Hopefully, that'll be the first sellout of the season, because we haven't did it so far with this Cardinal team. So we shall see. But going back, let's talk about currently BK and Ferrario show. I love the chemistry that y'all have every day between you, BK, Tanner. It's just hilarious. The quick wit, the jokes. I just love it, man. Did you see this kind of chemistry forming when y'all first got the show started?
You know what's funny? I didn't. So the show originally started, for people that don't know, it started with Rivs and BK.
Right.
And this was in the middle of the pandemic when, everybody was suffering from it and they had to cut costs. And look, 101 had to go through it. I mean, they moved on from Bernie Miklasz, which was a huge loss. And,
right.
They had to move on from Chris Ranji, who was a great friend of mine. And they had to fix things. And so they did so by shifting shows around, and they put Rivs and BK together, which was a great connection there. And they had contacted me and they said, "Hey, we're going to have you run the board for it." And I'm thinking, man, really? Like, part of me was like, man, I don't want to take a step back because I just got this opportunity. I've been on the air. Like, I really wanted to be on the air more. But to go back to what I told you guys before, like, you just don't say no. And I was like, you know what? Awesome. Let's do it, because this will hopefully turn into something. And I loved getting to do the show with Rivs and BK, and I learned so much from those two guys. And really, I think that's where the chemistry started between BK and I, because of Jamie Rivers and being a part of that show, because the three of us would just go back and forth. You'd give each other trouble and know that we're still good buddies after it, and, never agree with the other person, but stick to your guns with it. It started there. And then when the shows shifted again and Jamie Rivers went to the fast lane, and they told us that it was going to be BK and I, and I'm thinking, man, this could be big.
Right.
Because if you look around the market, there's not a lot of young guys that are talk radio here in St. Louis for sports. I mean, you got a lot of people who are grizzled vets. Like, Kevin Wheeler's been around a long time, and he's incredible at what he does. Randy Carricker, Jamie Rivers, Anthony Stalter. So this was the first time that they showed, I guess, the faith in the younger kids. And when BK and I got together, man, we had the conversation. We're like, man, let's just be ourselves here. Like, let's have fun, because the one thing I don't like about sports talk radio, like nationally, is where it's so dry, where it's so black and white and it's all numbers, and, nobody can have an opinion because this person feels like they're right. That's not sports talk radio, man. That's not what radio is. Like, radio's fun, like radio's when you're driving home, you want to laugh. Radio's driving home and you hate the person that's on the radio, but you want to listen to them. And that's what I feel like BK and I built. You got to have, you got to check your ego at the door with Sports Talk. And I think BK and I do a wonderful job of that, to where, BK and I don't think we're bigger than each other. We don't think that, oh, I've been on the radio this long, or, oh, well, I've been on the radio this long. Like, we're just two guys that love sports. And, we got plenty of humility. I think you always got to make fun of yourself before other people can make fun of you. And I think that's what works so well with BK and I is, we can go back and forth. Like, we can do jabs at each other, but we know it's in all fun and good taste. And we know that people are buying into it. And then when they brought Tanner on board, so Tanner had met me when I first got the job at 101, because they were going to hire Tanner to be a part-time board op. And Tanner met me because he was wanting to decide if he should go to Lindenwood for college or if he gets into radio. And, I told him, I'm like, look, college is great. You need to do college. In my opinion, you got to have a college degree if you want to go somewhere in the future. But I also told him you need the experience. So I told him, I said, if you have an opportunity in front of you here at 101, take it, because 101 is going to be 101, want to put you in a good position to kind of succeed, because I knew what their goals were. Their goals were to go younger and get more talent and get more entertainment on the radio. And so Tanner took the job as the part-time board op. Tanner worked with me during the bubble season as the board op for Blues hockey. And then when they shifted BK and I together, they were like, we're going to put Tanner on with you. And we were like, man, that's a perfect idea. Tanner's got a wonderful sense of humor. Tanner is a really intelligent baseball mind. Like, he brings a lot to the table when it comes to baseball with the two of us. But on top of it, he matches so well because he's got the sense of humor that BK and I do. So as much as we talk sports and get into the numbers and don't agree with each other, we also make fun of each other. And I think that's what really works well together. And we're starting to recognize that our listeners are starting to understand the shtick that we do. So I really think the chemistry is starting to grow with both of us. I think it's just getting better with what BK and I are starting to build with Tanner on our show.
Nice. And I definitely understand, because, chemistry is important to any show. Like, from day one, from what we've been doing to now, the chemistry, I feel, has just been incredible, and I always say it's important to not have everyone have the same thought process, agree on the same thing. That's how a great show happens, is when people may disagree. Then we get to debates, and it may get a little bit animated, but at the end of the day, it's still all love. Right, Joe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we definitely had our fair share. But at the end of the day, like you said, it's always a good show. And we talk the next day at work. We're on the next week, for the show.
Yeah. And luckily, BK and I never had one of those moments where we almost lost it on each other. Like, we've never gotten close to being angry with each other, because we get heated in conversations. Like, we get opinions, but we also, as you just said, we know it's in good fun, and we know it's in, just back and forth, creating good content on the radio. But I think the biggest thing is you got to stick with what you believe. You can't just go with what the other person is saying. And that's what I think BK and I do so well. When I first got into the business, I'd be a yes man. I would just agree with what anybody said. And I was always worried to give my opinion, because I haven't been around it enough. And it's like, man, I can't give my opinion with a Mike Claiborne. Mike Claiborne knows more sports than I will ever know. But then the more I put myself around teams, I spent a lot of time in locker rooms with the Blues and with the Cardinals and with the Rams, and, talked with a lot of people and got people's opinions on it. And I started to understand, it's like, okay, you're starting to get an opinion now. But the fact that BK and I can have our opinions and stick to them and understand, it's like, okay, well, that's just how you feel. That's just how I feel. And then we move forward with it. It creates good content. And I think when you're good buddies, you can do that on shows, rather than if you're trying to one up the other person. It's not going to be a healthy relationship on the air,
Right, most definitely. So, and congrats to y'all show, because I believe it was announced by BK. I think he posted on Twitter a while back that over this last few months or so, that y'all was rated like the number one, show throughout that certain time slot. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we were rated, I think, for the last quarter, which the last 3 months, we were third overall in that time slot among radio stations. So from 11 to 2,
okay.
I think we had like an 8 or 9 share, which the only 2 stations that were above us were our sister stations at Hubbard. It was The Point and Casey. And that's a big deal because, midday shows, think of it, like people aren't listening to talk radio from 11 to 2 because you're at work. And when you're at work, what do you have? You're either listening to a podcast, you're not listening to anything, or you have music in the background. So to have those numbers in the midday show was, one, insane. And then most recently, they just showed us from the last week, the first week of July or the second week of July, we had a 10 share. So we're continuing to rise, which is, I mean, we are so grateful for our listeners more than anything, because, you know, we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for the people that are actually tuning in every day and listening to us and putting up with our just idiocy on the air. But they told us at 101 that they've never had a midday show with the numbers that we've put together right now. So we're very proud of what we've done so far. But, you know, both BK and I are really hungry individuals. I mean, I'm 30, he's 28 years old. Like, we're not happy with where we're at. So we're taking this and we're saying, okay, great. Now what can we do to be better than that? So we're just continuing to try and grow from what we've been doing. But yeah, we're very blessed and honored for what we've gotten so far.
That's dope. Buddy.
Wait, you're 30?
Oh,
Look
there
a
you
day over 21. Oh.
Well, I appreciate that, because now that I'm 30, I'm thinking, man, I'm never going to look that young. But now I feel bad because I give Tanner problems all the time that he looks like he's 12 years old. So maybe I am younger than what I look. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I've seen.
That's dope, though, for real, for you on that 10 to get those awards. I shout out to you all for pulling it out. Good job. I'm definitely in your favor. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Man,
thank
you
you.
guys did it in a short amount of time.
Yeah, that's the other crazy thing. And I mean, to think about it too, like, we've gone through a pandemic. And I mean, I don't know about you guys, but when I was locked in and not leaving my house, I wasn't listening to a lot of radio. I mean, I was listening to podcasts, or I was watching television, or catching up on sleep, or trying to find different things to work. But throughout the pandemic, I mean, we still had respectable numbers. And then from there, once sports started to pick back up, people started to jump on board with it. So to go through what we've gone through and still pick up those numbers, man, I mean, it's a shout out to the hard work that BK does. I mean, behind the scenes, BK is a really hard worker. The same with Tanner. I mean, we're putting in work nonstop. We're watching things. We're talking with people. And then on top of it, we're always talking with each other. I mean, I got a text thread right now for tomorrow's show going with BK and Tanner right now. So, you know, we're three really hungry guys, and we never want to stop. You know, we just want to keep moving forward. And that's kind of been our goal from day one.
That's what's up. And speaking of Tanner, I've seen him on Twitter, and yeah, he like he about 15.
Oh yeah, we give him gloves all the time. He looks like he's 12, but yet he sounds like he's 90 on the air.
But he be knowing his stuff. But going back to the pandemic, as you said, you know, times are crazy. People losing their jobs. But for our show, it's crazy for me to say it, but the pandemic was like the best thing that happened for us, because it allowed guests that may not have been available, like coaches and other celebrities who we had on the show during that time. They may not have been available, and all of a sudden the doors were opening for us to get these guys booked, and it pretty much shifted our show from maybe what we used to discuss to really getting to know these guests in a different light. You know what I'm saying? Of course, we can debate about Cardinals or, you know, or NBA talk or whatever else, but it was really getting an opportunity to really know about these guests and what they've been through, where they started from, and they've been inspiration. So the pandemic really helped us out. And so it's all about how you adjust to certain adversities in life, you know, and obviously you did what you had to do in regards to your position. You didn't stay stagnant. You wanted to go around, and look at what you're doing now. Same thing with people who dealing with this pandemic. Don't let this pandemic stop you from still trying to make other things happen. Okay, you may not be able to go out here because it's on lockdown, but be creative. Use those creative juices that you got. Look at what happened with TikTok over the last year.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You're not wrong.
So, you know, use those skills to make money. You know what I'm saying? To get people aware, you know, brand yourself. So don't look at the lockdown or what's going on with this pandemic as I can't do my thing. I can't be me. You have plenty of opportunities to find other ways. With that being said, during that time, this man, broadcaster from the Cardinals, comes on to 101 ESPN permanently now. How does it feel to have the great Danny Mac as part of 101 ESPN and to see him almost every day, to talk to him, to learn so much from him on a daily basis?
I love it. Danny Mac's one of my favorites. I got to work with Danny Mac when I was at KMOX for a while as well, because he would do some shows here and there and fill in every once in a while. So I was kind of always around Danny Mac for a while at KMOX, but I mean, he is one of the hardest workers in this business that I know. And I've told him this to his face numerous times, that I take a lot of notes from what he does. I mean, look, the man calls Cardinals baseball 162 games out of the year. And then on top of it, he comes in and hosts a show from 10 to 11 Monday through Friday on 101 ESPN. And he's got kids, and he's got a wife. Like, he's got a lot going on right now. And he does a great website as well. So, you take a lot of pride and work ethic from a man like that to see what he does and how he got here. And, Danny Mac's kind of the rags to riches story, because he was a baseball player at Lindenwood. He was a guy that was just going to sporting events and broadcasting into his microphone. And then he worked his way into getting a job with KMOX. He worked his way into getting a job at Fox Sports Midwest at the time, now Bally Sports, which led to the Cardinals. So again, part of the thing that I've said tonight is, never say no. That was Danny Mac's mantra as well. Never say no. Just do whatever you can, but be creative and come up with ideas like you just talked about with the pandemic. Dan tells the story all the time that I've heard, at least, of, how he came up with ideas for Fox Sports Midwest packages, which were like, oh yeah, we'll pay you for that package. And he put all the work into it. So it's truly an honor to get to work with Mac. Again, I mean, so knowledgeable in the sport of baseball, loves what he does, a really hard worker. I take a lot of what I do on a day-to-day basis with what Danny Mac does.
And I love that he just, like Randy Carricker, their passion just for St. Louis in general just makes you love them that much more.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Randy's the same way, but Danny Mac's like that. Chris Kerber's like that. Of course, the St. Louis kid who is calling games for the Blues. Like, all three of those guys were individuals that it's like, man, you're, and I think that's why I got into it so much. It's like, you're looking at it and you're like, man, you guys were basically what I was. You were just in high school and you liked sports and you found a way to get into it. Curbs was an intern at KMOX. Curbs did an internship with Randy Carricker at KMOX. Randy sent Curbs into the locker room to get audio from Cardinals games. And look where he got. The same with Carricker. Carricker started off just making calls in and turned into a broadcasting job. Danny Mac, for me, for somebody who at the time out of college was like, man, how do you get into this business? Like, it's so hard to do this. I had so many people, guys, in college that told me, don't do this. It's a dumb idea. You're not going to go anywhere. I had college professors that told me you're wasting your time going into broadcasting. And I'm thinking, nah, I'm not, because it's what I want to do. And you watch those guys and how successful they were. That's what gives me the drive, and that's what gave me the drive, because I know that they got somewhere with it. I can get somewhere with it, and it just comes down to hard work. And I mean, you do have just a newfound respect for those guys.
Right.
I'd be like, well, have you met Lou Brock and called him Bob Gibson? No.
Look at me now.
That's true.
Look at me now, Wood. So you brought up earlier that one of your top moments was being at the Winter Classic and doing what you did during that time. I just want to guess another top moment in your life as an on-air personality, whether it's KMOX or 101 ESPN, but that was the opportunity to do an actual play-by-play game, Blues game, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, man. It's crazy that you say that, because while you teased that, I thought you were going to say that Stanley Cup run. And in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, that was the best moment. That's right. I love it. And I completely forgot. Yeah, I mean, my play-by-play. So I guess there's two ways of looking at it for me. Like, my play-by-play was a dream come true, and it was a moment that I'll never forget, and probably the highest I'll ever have in my career. But when I got the opportunity, I wasn't searching for it, if that makes sense. Like, I wasn't going out there to be a play-by-play guy. Like, I just got the opportunity because Chris Kerber was gracious enough and knew that I could do it, gave me that opportunity. So, like, that should be number one for me, and it was an incredible moment. But on top of it, that Stanley Cup run, I tell my wife all the time, I tell my dad all the time, I don't know if anything's ever going to top this, because I got into this business because I'm a Blues fan. And I was doing pre and post for the team that I grew up and loved. And my dad and I used to talk all the time, and my dad would say, I'm going to die before they win a Stanley Cup. And I'm like, no, you're not. We're going to enjoy this together. And the fact that they did that while I was broadcasting, I mean, it was something that I'll never forget. So honestly, in a typical Tony La Russa St. Louis Cardinals style, I got to say it's a tie for first in top moments between that broadcast and, of course, the Stanley Cup entire season for me for the Blues.
So when you knew that you was going to be taking Kerber's spot for that for that game, how much preparation did you do? Did you overdo it? I know.
Oh my gosh!
I know it had to be crazy and nervousness and everything.
Oh yeah, believe me, I overdid it to like the 10th degree with that. So I had no idea that he was going to pick me to do it. Like, I knew he was going to miss that game because of the MAC award that he had won, which was an incredible award, or I mean, it was a Stan Musial award, if I'm not mistaken. So I knew he was going to be gone, but in my thought, I'm thinking, okay, well, they're going to get the guy from the American Hockey League. Curbs, a person who did the internship that I did, his name is, Andy Zilch. I'm about to blank on his name. He's in the minor leagues in the AHL. He's calling games, and he started as an intern. He went to Lindenwood as well. I thought Curbs was going to pick him. By no means did I think he was going to pick me. And the way he announced it was going into the first intermission of a broadcast where he was tossing it to me for my intermission report. And while he's tossing it, he's like, oh, and, I got a bit of an announcement here that, coming up on so-and-so date, November 22nd, I believe it was, we got somebody that's going to be filling in. I'm going to be out. And I'm not even listening. Like, I'm sitting here getting ready to do my notes. And then he says, Alex Ferrario. And I looked up and I'm like, what'd you just say? And then he looked at me and he goes,
that's me.
You're doing the broadcast. And I go, no, I'm not doing the broadcast. And he's like, yes, you are. And, he and Joey had a heck of a time with me. Man, I like immediately I'm texting my dad. I'm texting my wife like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this. But to go to your question about the prep, yeah, I mean, I've called hockey before, but the only hockey I have called was at Lindenwood for college. And I don't know, maybe like 15, 20, 25 games for 2 years that I called. And then when I was an intern, I used to broadcast into my phone in the booth next to Curbs at Blues games. Like, that was part of my internship to just get reps. But I had never called like hockey. It had been about 6 years since I called a hockey game. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this isn't going to be good. So I went home, and it was probably, I guess it was about like a week before when he made the announcement. For that week, like, guys, I'm not exaggerating here. I turned on an NHL video game. I put it on computer mode of the Blues and the Predators because those are the two teams playing.
Smart.
And I muted the television, and I broadcasted that game off of a video game probably 6 different times a night for 7 nights in a row.
I love it.
That's all.
I mean, it was nonstop. I had TiVoed games that I would call off the television. There was so much work to get into it. Now, I'll show you this real quick, too. So I have a stat book that I use throughout pre and post game during the season. So this is what the stat book looks like for me, like what I do for pre-games.
Jesus.
Guys, this book for that broadcast, when the teachers used to say in high school, like, hey, you can use one note card for your test, and you would cover up, like there'd be no white on that note card? That's what this book looked like for that game. It was covered in stats. And I got to be honest with you, I don't think I used one of them in that hockey game. I watched the game like a hawk. I made sure that I didn't butcher anybody's name. I made sure that I didn't stumble over my words. I was so nervous going into it, but as soon as that puck dropped, man, I had the time of my life. I got to call it with Joey Vitale, who's one of my good buddies. To be able to do that, to call a Blues goal, like I got to call, this will be forever a trivia question in my opinion. who got to call the first goal of Klim Kostin's NHL career. I pray to God that this kid turns into be like a Hall of Famer or something, because then I can have this in my back pocket. But I got to call Klim Kostin's goal. Thank God that it wasn't a buzzer beater or a Blues win, because I didn't know how I was going to end the hockey game, because I can't say you can bring out the Zambonis. Like, that's Kerber's thing. And I didn't have a thing to say. So it worked out the perfect way possible, and I had put my phone on airplane mode for that broadcast because I didn't want to see any texts or negative tweets of me on the air. I waited until afterwards, and, God bless Blues fans, man, because I had so many messages telling me how great of a job that I did and how much fun it was to listen to me. So, yeah, I mean, that was a dream come true from a kid who was 5 years old, who was going to the Kiel Center to watch Keith Tkachuk and Pavel Demitra and Al McInnes play hockey, to calling a hockey game the year after the Blues won a Stanley Cup. I mean, you'll never be able to top that for me in my individual career.
Dope, man. And shouts out to the ladies. I think that was last week, Joe. They had like an all ladies crew for the YouTube game. First time in history.
The Orioles and
the Rays.
Maybe the Rays.
Yeah.
It was one of those, yeah. But I know the Orioles were one of the teams. But yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah. So shouts out to the ladies, man. Just a game changer, man. Doing big things. So shouts out to all the ladies out there, changing the narrative, being pioneers for what they do. Once again, this is the Platform Sports Talk Show. I am your boy Smooth, along with
Joe Bell,
and we have special guest.
AFAB. How's that? Is that a good nickname? We got it.
There it is right there. So you make sure tomorrow you say that on BK Ferrario.
Don't you worry. AFAB's the nickname now.
Yeah. And Bunny, she was on. She'll be back on soon. She was earlier driving back home from getting her COVID test, where negative. So she's all good. But
hallelujah.
Safety's first. You know what I'm saying? Then she'll be joining us back before we end this wonderful conversation. So let's stick with the Blues. Of course, you brought up that moment where you did the play-by-play. Of course, the Stanley Cup championship. And I know one of your toughest moments had to be that night in Anaheim.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Man, that's still a moment that, man, I don't even know how to put it into words. Like, that was a tough moment because Curbs and Joey were on the road. At the time, things were normal. And then in the middle of a commercial break, so what we do, I'm back in the studio at our studios at 101. They're on the road. So when we hit a commercial break, we put them in queue so I can hear them if they have anything that they need to tell me or whatnot. So they go to a commercial break, and it's in queue. And all of a sudden, I hear them going back and forth like, hey, what's going on? What's going on? And then they came back, and, like, everyone was on the bench looking. And I'm like, what is happening right now? And Curbs and them just started delaying. Like, they just started talking. And I'm thinking, man, what is going on? And they finally said that, hey, Jay Bouwmeester collapsed on the bench. And I didn't know what to do. And I'm thinking, oh my God. And so, everything goes through what they do, and the cameras can't be on him because you don't want to show that on television. Curbs and Joey have no idea what's going on. And so they talk for, a good 10, 15 minutes. And then they basically send it to a commercial break. And they go to a commercial break and they say, hey, Alex, we're going to send it to you because there's nothing we can do right now. We'll come back on when we get more information. And so I'm like, okay, cool. So they send it back to me, and so I'm just delaying. I'm talking about what went on, updating people that we'll get back up to Curbs and Joey momentarily. And then they finally got back to me, and they said, hey, send it to us. So we sent it back to them. And they basically just walked through like, Dave Bouwmeester collapsed on the ice. The medical emergencies were down there. They put him in an ambulance. They're taking him away. They're canceling this game tonight. And I'm thinking, well, of course they're canceling this game. But I'm also thinking, okay, well, what am I going to do? Because there's no information that they're going to give me. I'm not on the road. Curbs and Joey are going to have to pack up because they have to go with the team because the team's going to leave. And so they sent it back to me. And, we decided as a group, me and my producer at the time, we're like, we're going to make this a short post game. but then it turned into more, like, because we basically ended the game and we talked about Bomeister and we said we hope it's all okay. And then Curbs called me and said, hey, put me back on the air. They gave us an update on that. And then from there, I had the thought, and I'm like, okay, I need to call Jamie Rivers, because Jamie Rivers was a part of two different players collapsing on the ice. It was Yuri Fisher of the Detroit Red Wings, and then it was Chris Pronger of the Blues. Jamie Rivers was a part of both of those teams. So I called Rivers up. We talked for a good 15 minutes about, what that's like going through as an individual and how the Blues can handle this, blah, blah, blah. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, we're just going to wrap this up because there's no other information that I can give. I'm not going to speculate on what's going on here. We're just going to end the postgame. So we ended the postgame. And then, obviously, thank God that things were okay with Jay Bomeister. But, man, what a scary night to have all of that happen. And then really from a broadcasting standpoint, what a scary night, because you're not prepared for that. Like, you don't know what you're going to do. You can't speculate. You can't talk about that. All you can do is give people the facts of what's going on and then just try and put some perspective around it. So, thank God Jamie Rivers was there. Thank God that he was okay. But, yeah, I mean, that was a really scary moment for all of us to be a part of.
Joe, did you want to add on anything to that moment that happened, when it happened?
No, I mean, yeah, it was terrifying watching that. You're just kind of confused at first watching it from home, but you brought up the Pronger situation. My Uncle Jody's sister, my aunt, she was a huge Pronger fan, and she, like, we were texting about it that night, and she just brought up, like, the night whenever Pronger, pretty much died on the ice. I'm pretty positive his heart stopped and everything, and she, that's what she compared it to, and just how, like, she was, like, had a crush on him and everything, and she was so upset and whatnot. But, yeah, it's definitely a scary situation, and then for your job, you just always have to be on your toes for that kind of stuff. I, like, think of Piscotty a couple of years in 2015, whenever, he dove, and it looked like he was dead in the outfield for a little bit, so it's just Danny Mac had to, pretty much talk out his butt, you just got to be on your toes all the time.
Yeah, you got to basically go through what you have. And, props to Curbs and Joey, because they did a phenomenal job giving play-by-play of what was going on without making it worse. And, I mean, the thing that I always remind people about sports, and what I always try and remind myself about sports is, they're athletes, but they're also humans, which means they got family that are paying attention to it, So in that circumstance with Jay Bomeister, like, you don't know, his wife and his kids could probably be watching the television, or they probably could be listening to the broadcast. And you don't want to sit on there and be like, oh, man, that didn't look good for Jay Bomeister. Boy, I hope he's, however you want to go with it. Like, you don't want to do that, because his wife and his kids could be listening to that, and they could panic, So it's like, all you can do is just give the facts of, look, Jay Bomeister was taken off the ice in a stretcher. He's headed to the hospital, according to the team. They're going to cancel the game tonight. We'll give you more updates as we move along, and then bring people into the perspective that they can give. Curbs came on with me. He gave a play-by-play down in the tunnel of all of the dads, because it was the dad's trip, and they were all down there consoling the players. We told the players were in tears because they didn't know what was going on. They were going to the hospital. So to get that perspective, and then to get Jamie Rivers' perspective of somebody who was a part of a team with that, I think that's the important meat that you add to a story like that, rather than sit there and try and speculate of what's going on, because nobody wants to hear that.
Do you feel like the Blues and, of course, the fans, they have a different appreciation for what Jay Bomeister brought to the team than how they had him at first? Because it looked like he was always that, kind of like the Matt Holliday or Matt Carpenter of the Blues. They always were blaming him, saying, oh, he's not doing his job, or, whatever. Then, of course, he won the Stanley Cup. But then losing him, it looks like, even to this day, this Blues team still haven't fully recovered from having someone like him lost on the team.
100%. And I'm sure you guys will get this reference, but I've said this on the broadcast with Jay Bomeister. Jay Bomeister is at this era's Eric Brewer. Everyone hated Eric Brewer because he was traded for Chris Pronger. And everyone said, oh, well, Brewers know Chris Pronger. Well, of course Brewers know Chris Pronger. They traded Pronger and just got whatever they could get for him. And Brewer wasn't a bad player, but Brewer was the he was the scratching post of Blues fans, right? Like he was the guy that they beat up on because he could never do right. And that was Jay Bouwmeester. They acquired Jay Bouwmeester from Calgary. And I remember everyone was saying, well, you need to get a number one defenseman to play with Alex Pietrangelo. That was Jay Bouwmeester. And he never lived up to the expectations for people. And I'm not sure what those expectations were. Like, I think people thought Jay Bouwmeester was going to become this, like, Al McKennis player. He was never going to be that. Jay Bouwmeester was always a defensive defenseman with some offense. He could skate, but he was always a defensive defenseman. And he was always in the wrong place at the wrong time. Like, there was always a spotlight on him, right? Like, when a puck would go off his rear end and in the back of the net, people are like, of course, it's Jay Bouwmeester.
Right.
But that happened, like, once every 30 games. And nobody really appreciated Jay Bouwmeester until that cup run. And in my opinion, the Blues don't win the Stanley Cup without Jay Bouwmeester. Now, you can use that argument for Jordan Binnington, for Ryan O'Reilly, for Oscar. You can use that argument for every single player. But the reason I say
you stopped that Jamie Benn puck in the double overtime. Okay, that wasn't Binnington. That was Jay Bo.
Yeah, and I mean, think about this. That pairing of Jay Bouwmeester and Colton Parayko, they eliminated the top line of Mark Scheifele, Patrick Laine, and Blake Wheeler. They eliminated the top line of Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin and whoever was on that right side. I think it was Radulov. They eliminated the top line for the San Jose Sharks of Couture and Thornton and Kane and Hurdle, and they eliminated the perfection line in the playoffs. They shut down every team's top line, and that was Colton Parayko, but that was Jay Bouwmeester. Guys that can skate as well as Jay Bouwmeester, guys that have the reach of Jay Bouwmeester, they don't come along every day. Like, those guys are very rare in hockey. But what also Jay Bouwmeester brought to the team, and I tell people this all the time, he was a silent leader. Right. May not have wore a letter. He didn't talk a lot. I mean, honestly, Jay Bouwmeester, you'd be lucky to get, 15, 20 words out of him unless you're really sitting down to do an interview with him, because he just wasn't a talker. But Jay Bouwmeester was a leader on that team, and there's been plenty of stories of him standing up in the locker room when the teams were struggling and everyone listening, him going out there playing 27 minutes a night for the team. So he was a unsung hero in that playoffs, and I think people are really starting to understand the loss of Jay Bouwmeester these past couple of years. Now, I know a lot of people could say, well, Alex Pietrangelo is part of it. Yeah, I mean, Petro's a big reason why the team's hasn't won a cup again or been to the cup final again. But Jay Bouwmeester is a bigger piece of that, because Jay Bouwmeester was kind of the glue that kept that team together. He was a leader. He was loved by everybody in that locker room. And frankly, he did something that nobody on that ice can do, and that's play a lot of minutes and shut down the opposition. And frankly, they're missing that right now on this roster, and it's hard to just lose that guy and not have a replacement for him. Marco Scandella did good for a little bit, but Marco Scandella will never be a Jay Bouwmeester. Jay Bouwmeester is the Hall of Fame.
So as we keep with current events now, saw there was a comment earlier from Jody saying, speaking of opinions, Ferrario, give us your opinion on Tarasenko.
Vladdy situation.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is the hot topic right now. Look, I don't blame Vladdy for the attitude he has towards the Blues. Whether you want to connect this to him wanting to be a captain, whether you want to connect this to him not being happy with how the Blues have handled his shoulder situation, or whether you want to connect it to him not being happy about how Craig Berube wants to utilize him. Whatever that may be, he's a player, and he wants what's best for him. And if he feels like the Blues aren't providing that, then he's going to request a trade. And I don't think anybody should hate him for that. And I don't know if people really do hate Vladimir Tarasenko for this. I think people are like, oh, good riddance, let him go, blah, 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 whatever that may be. That's sports. So it makes sense that he wants out. I mean, he's had 3 shoulder surgeries. Whether that's the Blues messing up with their team doctors or whether that's just how he feels, I don't know that side. I haven't been able to talk with him or anybody involved with it, only the reports that we've all seen. But if he doesn't feel comfortable with the Blues in terms of how this relationship has gone, then that's okay. Then he needs to go somewhere else. I don't think he needs to be here because he's not fully committed to the Blues. He has been. He's been a great piece of this team, and I think it's time for him to move forward. In terms of the captaincy with Vladimir, I can understand him being frustrated with it. Like, if you're Vladimir Tarasenko, you're the longest tenured Blue along with Jaden Schwartz. you probably should be upset that you weren't captain. But my response to him saying, well, I should have been the captain is, Vladimir, do you really think that you were going to be the best suited captain for the team?
Exactly.
And I think anybody could see the writing on the wall that, look, Ryan O'Reilly's a captain.
Right.
And I would assume Vladimir saw that Ryan O'Reilly was a better suited captain. And frankly, Braden Shen and Colton Parayko were a better suited captain, because I've been in the locker rooms. Vladimir doesn't really like to talk to the media. Ryan O'Reilly is sitting at his stall waiting for the media to come in a game that's 7-1 loss, in a game that Ryan O'Reilly turned the puck over and the other team won it in overtime, in a game that Ryan O'Reilly scored a hat trick. He's talking to the media every single time. So it made a lot of sense. So if he's upset about that, okay, that's fine. Sometimes those relationships, the bridges get burned and you got to move on with it. So I think it's the best case scenario for Vladimir to be traded. I think it's the best case scenario for the Blues to move on from Vladimir Tarasenko. And I think it's just one of those times that you go your separate ways and you appreciate what is done in the past. And hopefully they can find a way to move him. You know, they haven't to this point. I don't really know how you can come back into next season and have Vladimir be a part of the team after everything that's been out in the open over these last few months. But with Doug Armstrong, you never say never. And I could also see him saying, you know what, Vladimir, you come back, you play well, and we'll trade you. But for right now, nobody wants you. So it's a weird situation. In my opinion, it's like days of our life for the St. Louis Blues. But again, I don't look down on Vladimir for his attitude towards the team. And I don't look down on how fans feel about Vladimir Tarasenko, because they invest in this team. But Vladimir's an athlete, and he wants to be in the best scenario for him. And if he feels it's not St. Louis, then he'll find the place for him.
So I know Joe has a few questions, Blues related or just hockey related, should I say. But before she does that, speaking on Vlad, let's say some way, somehow, he still doesn't get moved. Opening night at home at the Enterprise Center, they call Vladimir Tarasenko. What would be your expectation of the crowd noise that's going to happen if that happens?
You know, if it was any other market, I would say it's going to be loud boos. But for some reason, I just have this slight hunch that Blues fans would cheer for him, because they would say, oh, well, he's going to play and he's going through this, and maybe we can keep him here. You know, like, part of me feels like Blues fans would be like, well, maybe if we cheer for him, maybe we'll keep him here. I mean, think of the scenarios that we've seen before, right? Like, guys who have been here and then didn't want to come back, how often is it that they are booed nonstop? Like, I'm thinking of a recent one, Jason Hayward. I don't remember Jason Hayward getting booed out of the building at Busch Stadium when he said he didn't want to be there.
Nope.
I remember boos. Like, I remember it being some boos because, of course, he was outspoken and said, look, the Cubs are a younger team and I wanted to go there. But I don't remember people being, like, destroying him.
Yeah.
So there will be some people that will boo Vladimir Tarasenko, and rightfully so. I mean, they feel like that he shouldn't be a part of the team, and they'll boo him. But there will also be, I think, a majority of fans that there are in the building that will hold on to the fact that, okay, well, we get to see this guy for a couple more games, so we're going to cheer him on. And that's just, I think that's just a narrative of St. Louis sports fans. And, you know, I'm biased, but that's why I think they're the best fans in all of sports, that, you know, they don't let those things kind of get in the way like, you know, Philadelphia fans do, or Boston fans do, or New York fans do. Like, they appreciate the human just as much as they appreciate the athlete. And I think that's really important when it comes to the sports here in St. Louis.
All right, Joe.
All right, so, like, if Army
actually, hold on. I'm sorry, y'all. We have a little small disconnection. I want to make sure that we're back on before we continue. Give me 1 second here. One moment here. Got a little pause. Let's see. 1 second. Make sure we don't miss nothing. All right, it's going to try to connect us back in the next 5 seconds. Let's see. Okay, now we're back on. All right, sorry everybody, we had a quick little disconnection, but we are back. So now Joe had her question for Alex Ferrario. Go ahead on, Joe.
Okay, well, I got a couple questions, but so, like, if Tank doesn't make a move or no one wants no one, if Tank makes a move, but if Tank's not moved by Army, like, is that gonna ruin the chemistry in the, not the clubhouse, but the locker room?
I don't see how it doesn't. I mean, look, these guys are professionals. Like, Ryan O'Reilly is one of the nicest human beings in the world. It's not like he's just going to ghost Vladimir Tarasenko in the locker room and never speak to him. But I mean, for everything that's been out in the open of him not being happy with the team and not being happy with Craig Berube and not being happy with the captaincy, I don't know how it can be a good chemistry in the locker room. Now, they're all professionals. And look, at the end of the day, if Vladimir wants out, Vladimir's got to come back and have a good attitude and play well. And the players in that locker room want to win a hockey game. So if Vladimir's buying in and putting 100% effort in, then I think you're going to sit there and be like, okay, well, they can find their way through this. But, man, it's going to be really awkward in those couple of moments where he walks in for the first time at training camp. They hit the ice for training camp. I just don't see a scenario that he is a part of this team come the first week of hockey here in St. Louis. But, I mean, I think if you are forced into that, yeah, I think the players are going to be grown-ups and they'll suck it up and they'll go out there and perform with them until something happens. But it's going to be really interesting of what happens if they do keep him.
Yeah, and then, so are we really just waiting on Army to see if a team wants them, and then we'll go on and make our move? Like right now, that might be the only guy that's really out there, or is he gonna pull?
I've been telling people, and I compared this on air the other day to the Tampa Bay Lightning and Jonathan Drouin situation. And I don't know if people remember this, but Drouin wanted out of Tampa because he wasn't feeling like he was utilized the way that he should have been. And Steve Yzerman was the GM at the time. And Steve Yzerman said, we'll move you, but we're going to move you on our terms. And we find the right deal for us. And nobody was giving it to him. So Yzerman told Drouin, you're going to come back and play. And while you play, you better be good, because the better you are, the more likely you're going to get traded. Played well enough, I guess. And then finally Montreal got desperate and said, okay, we'll give you up Mikhail Sergachev, who's a really good defenseman for us, but we want Drouin. Paid the price. Now look who's the winner in that one. Tampa Bay with their top 4 defensemen in Sergachev, and Drouin's like a bottom 6 forward. That's what's going to happen with Doug Armstrong. Doug Armstrong is not going to trade Vladimir Tarasenko for a 7th-round draft pick and $7.5 million off the book, because he said it the other day in his media availability. He said, my job is to make the Blues a better team. And trading Vladimir for 7th-round draft pick, who you'll never see, doesn't make them a better team. So I really do see a scenario where he's going to hold on to Vladimir until a team gets desperate enough to say, okay, we'll give you this. We don't want to, but we'll give this to you because we need Vladimir. And if that means going into the season and letting Vladimir play a couple of games and looks like he's a good player so teams can see him be healthy, then that's what Doug Armstrong will do. But the only way Vladimir is going to be moved is if it is an upgrade for the St. Louis Blues. And I truly believe that, because Doug Armstrong plays hardball all the time.
And like I told Joe earlier before the show, that I trust Army to make a move when people are thinking, and nothing's going to happen. They're going to stand pat. Armstrong is that kind of guy that already like 2-3 steps ahead of you. And like, okay, well, if this happened, well, I got this already ready. Let's make it happen. Like, for instance, when I brought up early on the show, everybody was talking about how we need a new center. So we got Tyler Bozak. So we're thinking, oh, it's all good. They're right behind. What happened? Ryan O'Reilly. What a move by Armstrong. So he knows what's going on. I feel he's always steps ahead. It's just a matter of just actually making it happen. Go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
I feel like a lot of people forget about Sundqvist on this team. Do you feel like, I feel like he's a different maker. I don't know if you feel the same way or not, but I felt like he was good on the penalty kill and everything. And this last year was just not that fun to watch, I feel like, and I think it happened once Sonny got hurt. So, what's your thoughts on Sundqvist?
Plain and simple, this season sucked, because doing pre and post, it felt like every other night somebody got hurt. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I can't do another post game talking about a guy getting injured. But I'm with you. I mean, I was the one before the expansion draft, like during the season, that I said, look, you can't expose Sundqvist or Barbashev. And I understand people respond to that as, oh, what are you talking about? They're third and fourth line forwards. That's fine. But they're an identity to the team. You know, Craig Berube was asked last season in the offseason. He does this availability with season ticket holders, and Joe Vitale did the interview with him. And one of the kids asked Craig Berube, who's your favorite player on the team? And he said Oscar Sundqvist, because he does everything. And that's what I think people forget about Oscar Sundqvist. You know, he had an evolution when he was acquired by the Blues to where he was slow, he was the bottom center, and he really wasn't doing much. And then the next season, that cup run, was when Sundqvist kind of transformed himself. He started eating healthier. He talked about how he and his girlfriend were doing vegan diets. They were trying to lose some weight. And he was on the ice, and man, he was fast, and he was going to the net. We all saw how effective he was on the ice for the Blues that season. That's what type of player Oscar Sundqvist is. Is he a top six winger? No, I don't think so. Is he a 30-goal scorer? No, I don't think so. But he is a guy who I think matches the identity of the Blues. Craig Berube says it all the time. They don't win hockey games off of a superstar. They win hockey games off of 4 separate lines going out there and playing hockey. And that's why I think it's important to have Oscar Sundqvist, whether he's on the 4th line, the 3rd line, or the 2nd line this season. You need that type of player on the ice for the Blues because they were missing that identity all season last year, which is why I think they were swept so easily by Colorado.
Yeah, I don't know, Fred, if you were going to say anything or not. I have 2 more questions. One, I guess, is about Chief. I love Chief. I love his, how grit he is and everything, but I feel like he didn't coach Hoffman the right way. I feel like Hoffman is a top 6, and Sanford was getting more ice time than him, I feel like. I don't know, and now Hoffman's gone, so that's whatever, but I don't know if maybe that was part of Hoffman's decision. I know the Habs came in last minute and offered him more money, but I don't know if it was money and, hey, I didn't get to play the type of hockey I wanted to play.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely not wrong in that thought process here. I think a lot of people blamed Craig Berube for what went wrong with Mike Hoffman. But, I mean, as much as you look at Craig Berube, I also tell people, well, you got to look at Jim Montgomery, who was running the power play. I mean, Jim Montgomery was in charge of special teams, and Mike Hoffman was on the 2nd power play unit, not getting a lot of ice time. Why didn't somebody jump on that and say, hey, we need to move him up? So I think it was a full kind of coaching staff blunder with Mike Hoffman. But on the flip side of that, I told people in the season, like, look, if you're Mike Hoffman, you're coming to a Craig Berube style hockey. Like, Craig Berube's not going to alter his coaching style for one player. I mean, look what he's done with Vladimir Tarasenko. I mean, he basically told Vladdy, no, you're not a sniper anymore. You're a power forward. Go to the net. Vladimir didn't like it. You didn't get much success out of it. Craig Berube knows what he wants and knows what's successful on the ice, and I think that's what happened with Mike Hoffman. Mike Hoffman got better towards the end of the season. And frankly, I don't blame Mike Hoffman for the struggles either. I mean, look, like, they didn't have a training camp. Like, normally you get 3 weeks of training camp, you get 8 preseason games before you even start the season. They essentially acquired Mike Hoffman, had a training camp for a week, I believe. They played a couple of scrimmage games against themselves, which is never getting a real taste of a team. And then you jumped right into the hockey game. And Hoffman was a top 6 winger for the Blues, and he was good at the beginning. Then when Tarasenko came back, then it was, okay, well, now you're a depth forward. And then when Jordan Kyrou was breaking out, well, now you're a 3rd-line winger. So it's kind of a full blame, in my opinion. Like, Mike Hoffman didn't play to the style that Craig Berube wanted him to. Mike Hoffman is an East Coast kind of player. What I mean by that is pond hockey. Like, Mike Hoffman's a shooter. Craig Berube is a grinding coach. You got to go after the puck. You got to fight for the puck. We're not just going to give you the puck. And I just think the lines got crossed. And I just don't know if it was ever going to be successful for Mike Hoffman here. Me personally, I wanted him back. I think for what he signed in Montreal, I think you should have brought him back because he makes a lot of sense as your 2nd-line left winger. It's a cheap offer. And frankly, he's your number 1 power play guy. But Mike Hoffman's success is going to come on the power play. Mike Hoffman's success is not going to come at 5-on-5. And the Blues are a 5-on-5 even strength team. That's how they win hockey games. That's how they won the Stanley Cup. So I think it was something that both sides needed to part. I think it was something that the Blues are really trying to figure out what their identity is. And I just don't know if Mike Hoffman was going to match that. Is he going to have success? Probably. He's probably going to be a 25 goal scorer, and people are going to be like, oh, Doug, Craig, what are you doing? You messed up here. But I say the same thing about Robbie Fabry, and I say the same thing about Joel Edmondson. Those guys were never going to meet the expectations that they have right now on the Blues roster. They were individual players for the Blues. They got a new life with where they went. Mike Hoffman was never going to be the guy he was in Florida with the Blues. He might get back to that in Montreal.
Fabry's my boy. I miss him.
A lot of people miss
Fabry jersey.
a lot of people miss him.
Yeah, my last question is just like just a thought, whatever. But with Ovi's new contract, is he going to pass up Gretzky?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
100% he's going to pass Gretzky. I mean, here's the thing with Ovechkin, and I don't know the exact number he's away, but I think it's basically 2 full seasons or 3 full seasons of normal Ovechkin. Like, I think he's got to get 40 to 50 goals in a season for 3 or 4 years before he can get to it. And I know that seems outlandish to say, but Alex Ovechkin is the best shooter in the National Hockey League. And yeah, argue me if you want with Nathan McKinnon and Connor McDavid. Alex Ovechkin is the best shooter in the National Hockey League. And the thing why I believe he will beat Gretzky's record is because he stays healthy. Go back and look at Alex Ovechkin's games played every year. It is rare that he misses games. Like he doesn't get concussions or he doesn't get, arm injuries or things like that. Now I'm knocking on wood as I'm saying this because I really hope I don't ruin Alex Ovechkin's career.
He got Ferrario.
Yeah, he's going to get AKO'd, as we like to say on BK and Ferrario, and God, I hope that's not true. But no, I mean, he stays healthy. He's got Nicholas Backstrom, who's still a number 1 centerman, and they got a good team. So I think Alex Ovechkin will beat that record. I think that's why he signed this 5-year contract. That will be his last contract in the National Hockey League, but he did that because he's going to beat Gretzky's record. And I am fully confident in saying that Alex Ovechkin will be the number 1 goal scorer in the National Hockey League in history at the end of his career.
Yeah, like he wants to win the cup again, but I feel like he signed that contract to beat the Great One.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We all would like the cup, but I'd rather go down in history as the greatest goal scorer in the history of the game. I think that would be a little bit better.
Yeah.
Then Joe got a couple comments. He said our 4th line single-handedly broke the Sharks. And then talking about Ovi, 5 seasons with 33 plus goals.
Dominance.
Yeah, and that's easily doable for him. I mean, you figure you get 1 season where he scores 40 goals, which I can see happening. Then you don't need the 33 the next couple of years. He'll beat that. I would give you guys a prediction here, and hopefully I'm not wrong on this. I would say he'll beat that record probably by year 4 of his 5-year contract.
Okay.
I can see it. My uncle and my brother have a little tally mark in his man cave downstairs for Obi trying to catch up to him. So we'll see.
Tally marks.
Yeah.
Right. So they probably won't admit it, but do you feel that the Blues over these last 2 seasons, of course, the first year no fans at all, they had the play in in Canada and everything. Do you feel that this team just wasn't a COVID team, just can handle playing throughout this process of adjustments and not having that regular season life? Do you feel that they just wasn't a team that can handle the adversities?
100% I do. I've said that since the bubble. They weren't a COVID team. They are not a COVID team. Look, I mean, when they returned before that pause in the pandemic hit, in my opinion, that Blues team was going to the Cup final again.
Right.
I mean, they were the best in the Western Conference. Their play was simultaneous to what they had done the year prior when they won the Cup. Now, when they lost Bouwmeester, that was a big blow, and I don't know if they would have been able to overcome that, but they did get Marco Scandella, and Scandella was playing well. Pandemic hits. A lot of the Blues players suffered from COVID-19. I mean, that was reported before training camp opened, and when training camp opened, they practiced for maybe 3 days, got on a plane, went to Canada, and they were stuck in Canada. And a lot of those players expected a different scene in Canada. Like, they expected the opportunity to go out and golf and to go on hikes. They weren't allowed to do any of that. They were basically stuck in their bubble and couldn't leave the hotel. And again, what I said earlier, like, you always got to remember these guys are athletes and they're humans. As a human, if I'm forced to be away from my family for, let's see what Tampa did when they went to the Cup and won it. Was about 2 months, 2.5 months.
Right.
If you're telling me that I can't be around my kid and my wife for 2.5 months, that's not going to be easy for me. I'm not going to be able to handle that. And on top of it, I'm stuck in my hotel room. Some people can handle it. Some teams had a lot of success with it. Look at Dallas. Dallas went on that run, and they went to the Cup where nobody expected them to do that. Dallas can handle a pandemic season, in my opinion. Now, was it tough on some of those players? 100% it was. Like, a lot of those guys did have to be without their family, which is tough. But they found a way to overcome that, so did Tampa. Blues just couldn't do that. And then they started off this past season. And look, they had a big loss in Alex Pietrangelo, which is always a tough transition. But once again, you didn't have a normal training camp. You had no preseason games. I mean, you essentially played yourself 3 games and then started to play NHL competition. You're not going to go out there and go against, Ryan O'Reilly the same way that you're going to go against Nathan McKinnon on the other team. It's just not going to happen.
Don't bring up that name.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. It still stings. So you get thrusted into that season with new faces on the team. You got Mike Hoffman, you got Torrey Krug, you got Justin Falk, a lot of new faces. No training camp, no preseason, no traveling basically with your team. Like, you can't be around your team. And you're going to say that it's a normal season? No, there's no way, man. I'm sorry. I don't buy into that. The Blues just couldn't overcome those problems on top of the injuries that took place. Some teams could. There are a lot of teams that handle it. And I got so many people that gave me problems throughout the year saying, oh, it's just excuses for, just admit the team sucks. That's fine. Everybody's allowed their own opinion. But for me, who was around that team during the 18-19 Cup run and seeing how close they were, and the closeness came from them going out to the bar. Guys, the song Gloria came from them being at a bar after a victory.
Right.
Their camaraderie comes from being around each other. And you took that away from them in 1.5 seasons, and look what happened. They were a bad team. So
shoot, I mean, in 2019, they couldn't go. They had to stay in a hotel in St. Louis with each other instead of going home with their families. You couldn't even
sleep in your own bed during that season. So there's no way you can convince me that this team. And look, here's the thing about this opinion. There's no evidence to back it up. You can ask the players. There's no evidence to back it up. The only evidence that can back it up is when this year hopefully gets back to normal, which we don't know if it's going to. Maybe you get some signs from it. But in my opinion, the bubble broke the Blues, and mentally it was something that they just couldn't come back from.
So let's talk about someone who we just acquired recently. That was Pavel Buchnevich.
Nice. Nailed it.
Thank you. Talk about him and what should Blues fans expect to see for the next, hopefully, 4 years of us having him, or 5 years.
Look, I love this deal. I really do love this deal. In my opinion, this is comparable to what the Blues did when they got Ryan O'Reilly. They addressed a massive weakness. And the biggest thing that this Blues team needed this offseason was a power forward, a big body, and someone on the left side who could play with O'Reilly and Perron. And they got that. They went out and they traded for that guy, and you didn't have to give up much for him. Look, Sammy Blagh's a great player. Sammy Blagh might be good for the Rangers, but he was never going to be a top 6 winger for the Blues because he couldn't stay healthy. Pavel Buchnevich is a 26-year-old who is coming off of his best year, and he hasn't even hit his prime yet. Like, hockey players don't hit their prime until 28, 29, 30 years old. He is before the prime of his age. And he's already gotten 20 goals. Like, in my opinion, Pavel Buchnevich is your number 1 left winger for this upcoming season, pending some type of crazy Doug Armstrong move that he could pull off. And for the next 4 years, he's a top 6 winger for you. And he's a guy who every year should be expected to score 20 to 25 goals. And he addresses the need for the Blues, which I'm really excited about. And the fact that they got him for $5.8 million is a steal, in my opinion, because look at what Gabriel Landeskog just got. I mean, that was $8 million for 7 years. Now, Buchnevich is not a Landeskog, but he's the next best thing, and you're only paying $5.8 million for him, where if you look at some other comps around the NHL, those guys are getting $6.5, $7.5 million. This is a steal for a guy who could potentially be a 30-goal scorer for you, which I'm excited to see.
Which, like you said, like last year, I feel like you can kind of compare it to the Cardinals this year, where sometimes we'll put up 2 runs tops. Last year, I just feel like we were just waiting for the team just to put the puck in the net. They just would not do that. So hopefully, like you said, that's going to help out potentially 30-goal scorer.
Yeah, and nobody went to the net. I mean, the biggest thing that I remember from this past season was doing post games and talking about how everyone seems to go away from the net. Like, it was so easy for goaltenders to stop Blues attacks because they would take shots from the outside and there'd be no bodies in front. Now, Buchnevich is a shooter. Like, we talked with Kenny Albert, who does play-by-play for the Rangers, and he said, look, the guy likes to shoot the puck. He's a Russian, so it makes a lot of sense. Like, a lot of those Russians, they love to shoot the puck. Look at Alex Ovechkin, Vladimir Tarasenko, Evgeny Kuznetsov. But when you're 6'3", 206 pounds,
use that body.
Craig Berube going to tell him, look, shoot the puck all you want, but go to the damn net.
Right.
And when he goes to the net, you're going to see success come from there. And I think that's a big need and a big weakness that the Blues had.
And another guy that I really want to see develop to being that guy is Robert Thomas. So like last season, he had a good start. Like, okay, here we go. But then something happened, and it just kind of faded away a little bit. And he wasn't the guy that we all hoped that he was going to be. What's something that he needs to do to improve his game and get to the level of what we have the expectations, and not just us as fans, but the organization has had on him?
The biggest thing that he needs to do is shoot the puck more. Robert Thomas is a playmaker. Robert Thomas is a guy who picks up a lot of assists. Go back and look at his point totals when he played junior hockey. I mean, my man had a ton of points, but they were all from assists. He's not a shooter, but the Blues need him to be a shooter. The way that they are structured down the middle are bodies who can move the puck, big bodies who can move the puck, and bodies who can shoot the puck. Braden Shen, Ryan O'Reilly, Oscar Sundqvist, Ivan Barbashev. Thomas's biggest issue this season was, man, he was just too passive with that puck. He would get it on his stick, and then he would look for the better option, where the better option was him putting the shot on net with guys moving towards the net. So I think the biggest thing for Thomas to hit his potential and what fans need to be focused on is him becoming more of a shooter. Now, that doesn't mean he needs to become a sniper and take 15 shots a night, but what he needs to do is he needs to make the goaltender think. He needs to make the guy in between the pipes when Thomas is coming up the ice with 2 other guys on his side think, okay, is this guy going to shoot or is this guy going to pass? Because last year, every time Thomas came into the zone, it was, oh, well, I'm going to stop the pass because that's who he's going to. That's what's keeping him from being a number 2 centerman right now for the Blues, because in my opinion, you come into the season, he's your third-line center.
My last question in regards to the Blues, and I know last season, Joe, you were pretty much – I was surprised when you said this, and I'm not sure if it has changed over the season. Yes.
What did I say?
Yes. So you was talking about Binnington and how you felt that he's overrated.
Mm-hmm.
Do you still feel that way, Joe? And then what's your thoughts, Alex? Do you feel that Binnington is just because of what he had that great season in 19 that he really hasn't lived up to what he done back in 2019 for these last 2 seasons?
19 was a fairy tale, like he did everything right. Starting from his first game in the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
Do I think he's a top 5 goaltender? No, I don't. That's what everyone else thinks he is as a Blues fan on Twitter. Me, I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and I don't think he's a top 5. Maybe not even top 10, but that's just me. I just feel like he's got some holes. As in his 5 hole, because that's where everyone keeps scoring.
If you weren't going to take that one, I was going to take it. Come on. I was like, that pun was laying for you right there. I personally, I must be the president of the Binnington bandwagon, because I'm the only one that sits here and continues to pump his tires. And you're not the only one who feels that way. I had a lot of people who tell me that you're an idiot, Ferrario, which seems to be a normal thing. I still believe he's a top 10 goaltender. Do I think he's a top 5 goaltender? Nah, because I think there's other guys who have outperformed him. I mean, look, Vasilevsky is the pinnacle of goaltenders in the National Hockey League right now. I think right up there with him, you could put Connor Hellebuck, you could put Tuukka Rask, you could put Carey Price. I would have Jordan Binnington on the second tier of goaltenders right now in the National Hockey League. And there's not many on the first tier. But he's a guy on the second tier, in my opinion. And the bubble was an anomaly, in my opinion. The bubble, I don't think anybody was right, especially Binnington. This season, if you look at what Jordan Binnington did, he wasn't horrible. Was he spectacular? No. But I always go back to a Ken Hitchcock quote when it comes to goaltenders. Your goaltender is a product of your defense. And an anomaly is Andrei Vasilevsky. You could probably put him in front of the Edmonton Oilers and he would be a stud because he's just that way. But Jordan Binnington's success came from a stellar defense in front of him. Jordan Binnington dropped off in the bubble because of a lack of play from the defense, whether it be COVID, missing of Jay Bouwmeester, missing of Joel Edmondson, whatever it may be, he wasn't on his game. Last year was a product of being bad in front of Jordan Binnington. Jordan Binnington was the reason the Blues made the playoffs, in my opinion. I mean, the games that they won, he stole the show because the Blues weren't scoring any damn goals for him. And against the Colorado Avalanche, go back and watch the games against the Avalanche. They were blowouts if you look at the final score, but going into the middle of the third period, they were 1-goal games. And that was because of Jordan Binnington. Do I think Jordan Binnington can ever get back to the form he was against the Boston Bruins? Nah, because, I mean, that was no other goaltender has ever done what he did. Marty Brodeur never did what he did, nor did Patrick Waugh. You'll never go back to that. But do I think Jordan Binnington can win another cup as a goaltender for the Blues? 100%. The only way that's going to happen, though, is if they get better players in front of him.
Right.
And you got to get better play in front of Jordan Binnington. Jordan Binnington's success came from the ease of what he was doing in net because he could always see the puck. If you go back and watch that series against the Avalanche, Binnington could never see the puck because there was always two guys' asses right in front of his face. And nobody was pushing those guys out of front of the net. So they got to get better in front of Jordan Binnington. And I think if they do, I think Jordan Binnington is right back up there, closing in on that first tier of goaltenders in the NHL.
Don't get me wrong. Like, 2019, I'll forever be grateful to Jordan Binnington. Like, obviously, like, ROR, and I'm going to even throw Sonny on that list of top guys that are the reason we won the Cup. Schwartz is another one, but Benner's like that number one guy. So I'll always love him for that.
Yeah.
I just don't like how, like, Jake Allen, if he had a bad game, we blame Jake Allen, not the defense. And nowadays it was the defense's fault. You know what I'm saying? It's funny how I can relate some Cardinals stuff to Blues stuff with how St. Louis fan base can be about both of these teams. But I mean, I hope he turns it around. Like you said, he's not going to be 2019, but
yeah, I think when it comes down to what it comes down to with Jake Allen too, and look, I loved Jake Allen. Jake Allen was just never a number one goaltender for the Blues. What the difference between Jake Allen and Jordan Binnington was, Jordan Binnington would make the save that he wasn't supposed to make. And I'm talking 18-19 because, and frankly, 19-20 before the bubble. I mean, in 19-20, I mean, he had 30 wins, which was second best to Andrei Vasilevsky in the NHL. He was playing pretty well up to that point. The only thing with Jake Allen was Jake Allen just couldn't make that one-time big save for the Blues. And Jordan Binnington seems to be that guy that can do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing with Binnington is that I really like about him is he's got a little Patrick Waugh to him. And I know a lot of people don't like that about Jordan Binnington because they want their goaltenders to be, quiet, composed, between the pipes. Jordan Binnington, if you get in his grill, he's going to throw some gloves at your face. Like, I loved that game against the San Jose Sharks, I believe it was, where he fake punched Evander Kane and then went after Devin Dubnyk.
Yeah.
Everyone else hated it. They were like, Jordan Binnington, you just need to play the game, stop whining. No, what Jordan Binnington did in that game was he knew his team needed a spark. He knew he wasn't going to provide it, so he figured he'd provide it when he skates off the ice, and the Blues went out there and did that. Jordan Binnington has an element to his game that other goaltenders don't have, and I think that's an important thing to have with him. But again, I think he's trying to think. He's strawberry ice cream. Jamie
I like strawberry ice cream.
Yeah, Jamie Rivers always compares Carl Gunnarsson to vanilla ice cream because you always can depend on it. Anytime you want vanilla ice cream, it's always there for you. It's always good. You never hate it. Some people like strawberry ice cream. Some people don't like strawberry ice cream. If you don't like it, you're never going to like it. You're never going to buy into it. But if you do like it, you're going to stay on board with that all the time. I don't think there's an in-between with Jordan Binnington, and that's the only way that I can put it with him.
So
Jody said he thinks that Benner and Thomas are two guys that got affected by the bubble / COVID play the most, so he has a hard time blaming them.
Yeah, well, and with Binnington too, man. I mean, we all remember that bubble. Colton Parayko was not Colton Parayko.
No.
Like Colton Parayko was just not himself in that playoff. Frankly, the best defenseman in the bubble was Justin Falk. Yeah. So I mean, like Pietrangelo wasn't himself. Parayko wasn't himself. Scandella wasn't himself. So I mean, those guys were affected massively. And you take those guys out of play, Binnington's not going to be himself. But Binnington did give up bad goals. Like, he gave up goals that he should stop. And I will not take that away from people who give crap to Binnington. But then you go into this year, Colton Parayko was not 100%. Torrey Krug had the Justin Falk effect, where he's a new guy to a new team, no training camp. It's not going to be easy to transition into that. I tell people, watch out for Torrey Krug this upcoming season, because I think he's going to have the Justin Falk effect.
I was just about to ask that question to you. You got me.
Yeah, he's going to be the guy that he was in Boston. The problem with Torrey Krug this past year was that they tried to make him something that he wasn't. And now you can put him into the role that you need him to be if Colton Parayko is healthy. Right. And that ties back to Binnington. Binnington's only going to be good is if Colton Parayko is the number one defenseman that they need him to be, is if Falk can be the same guy he was, if Scandella can be a top four defenseman, and if Krug can be himself. Otherwise, Binnington's not going to be able to steal the show every single night. It just won't happen.
I would be remiss if I didn't ask from your boy Lou Korak about Jamie Olesiak. Who was that guy?
Damn it, Lou. Always trying to get that in there, isn't he? So Jamie Oleksiak, guys, and I mean, Joe, you can talk about this because like the Blues need help on defense. They need a guy who's nasty, who's big, who keeps guys away from their goaltender. Well, guess what? Jamie Oleksiak matched that to a T. 6'7", 230 pounds, doesn't like anybody who goes near their goaltender with the Dallas Stars. He matched the Blues to a T. And so all offseason, I was saying on BK and Ferrario, this is the guy. You want a guy? Go get Jamie Oleksiak. He was the one that the Blues needed to acquire. And then the Golden Goose was selected by Seattle, and he was signed to an extension, which, frankly, that money that Seattle gave him, I would have paid him that money here in St. Louis because he's a game changer. But, yeah, he was the girl who got away. He was the Golden Goose. He was the lottery ticket that you missed one number on. Jamie Oleksiak was a fixer for the Blues, and Lou Korak likes to rub that in my face that he's not here. So damn it, Lou, you got me again.
Man, I have to say this has definitely been an incredible interview, incredible time with you, talking about your beginnings, the hustle in you, the grind, keeping at it, talking about the highs and lows from your time with KMOX and 101 ESPN. Real quick before we go ahead and go, the Cardinals. Today, I heard you on the BK Ferrario talking about Bader and how you've been so impressed pretty much of the turnaround that he had. And Bunny would tell you, Joe would tell you, whoever else would tell you that I've been a real stickler in regards to Bader because I just felt like, okay, you have these other guys who you be let go to free people like Bader to perform, and he hasn't lived up to it. But I've also said that progress is sexy, and he has shown great strides this season in regards to his approach. And looks like I showed Joe this source a while back. Looks like Bader has some type of possible like allergen or allergy issue, so it kind of affected his play, and he really wasn't focused as much as he wanted to. And now he got that adjusted, and now that he's healthy, looks like we're starting to see the real Bader and how much it can hit. Now today it didn't help. He had a few times where he had men on base and he didn't get no base hits, but overall he's been amazing. And I admitted on Twitter yesterday, like, hey, I apologize. Congratulations to you, Bader. Good job, Mo. Whatever. Good job. Cause hey, I can criticize, but I can also say, hey, I was wrong. And looks like Randy did the same thing this morning. Him and Michelle was saying they wrong about Bader and Mo Zayla, the front office, about certain moves that they made or didn't make. But I think overall, yeah, great season by Bader. The main thing, like this Cardinals team, which everyone can agree on, I'm pretty sure, consistency.
Mm-hmm.
We need the consistency. So with that being said, before we go, a few things. Is this Cardinals team too inconsistent to have faith that they can make it to the playoffs?
Yeah, unfortunately, if you listen to me on BK and Ferrario, you know I'm Mr. Positivity with the Blues and Mr. Negativity with the Cardinals. And I don't mean to be, but I haven't seen enough from this Cardinals team that shows me that they're a playoff team.
Right.
They're a team that can go out like they did last night against the Cleveland Indians and put on a show. And you're thinking, oh yeah, this team's turning the corner. They're about to make a run, just like they did against the Giants in both series. But then they also have the next game or the next series where they lose 2 of 3 against the Pirates or get swept by the Detroit Tigers. It's just been too inconsistent for me. And really it comes down to offense. The pitching has been so much better these last couple of months. And that's a lot to say with the injuries that this team has suffered from. But they found ways. But the offense, and look, the problem is you're relying on individual guys to do it every night. Like Nolan Arenado cannot be a savior every night. Paul Goldschmidt cannot be a savior every night. Nor can Harrison Bader, Tyler O'Neill, Dylan Carlson, Tommy Edman, Paul DeYoung. You need all of them throughout the season. And I know that's a lot to ask throughout a 162-game schedule because everyone's going to go through dry spells. But the Cardinals' problem is they only have one guy who goes on a hot streak. And then the other guys are kind of waiting to jump in or they're in their cold streak. They don't have multiple guys who are kind of piggybacking off of each other. And that's the biggest thing for me. And as much as I want them to be a playoff team, as much as I want them to be aggressive at the trade deadline, I don't know if one move fixes that unless you're going out there to get a massive bat. And I think that's what they're missing right now. I think they're missing another guy who can contribute in the middle of the order because they got a lot of guys like Harrison Bader who can hit 7, 8, 9 and be productive. They got a lot of guys who can hit leadoff, Tommy Edman, Dylan Carlson. They don't have guys in the middle of the order who can drive runs in other than Nolan Arenado, Paul Goldschmidt, and Tyler O'Neill. But the problem is when one does it, the other two aren't. And you need guys who can help out the other every once in a while.
Yeah, and my thing with O'Neill, yes, he's definitely improved as well. But he still can't handle the pressure, I feel, when he has men in scoring position. That once he gets that part down, that's when his star is going to rise even more. Like I said, he's taking great strides this year, but he needs to get better with men in scoring position. There's too many times where it's bases loaded with 1 out or 2 men on with 1 out or whatever, and he either strikes out or I know Joe be saying he be having these little pop-ups or whatever. Like today, he had a little. It was base loaded or was it two men on base, Joe? And O'Neill hit a little.
2 men on, but yesterday, man, the bases loaded. I think it was.
Yeah.
And a little dribble.
Yeah. It's like, come on.
You got people on Twitter saying that Yachty shouldn't be batting 5th when he hits it to the wall, but O'Neill does a little dribbler to the pitcher. Like, I don't know.
See, the problem is all of those guys are 6, 7, 8 hitters for you.
Yeah.
You don't have a 4 or 5 hitter. I think Dylan Carlson is a great number 2 hitter. But the problem is Tommy Edman isn't a good number 1 hitter for you right now. He's just inconsistent on one side of the plate. You know that Arenado and Goldschmidt, in my opinion, Arenado and Goldschmidt need to be hitting 3, 4. Mm-hmm. Carlson should be hitting 2. You need to get yourself a leadoff hitter who can get on base at a consistent clip. You don't have a number 5. You don't have a guy who's hitting behind Arenado, who's hitting cleanup, that can wipe the bases clear, that can get guys on. Tyler O'Neill is a great home run threat at the middle of the order in terms of the 5-6 spot without guys on, or maybe after 1 run scores and people kind of second guess Tyler O'Neill. You don't have a guy who can hit in clutch moments for you right now other than Arenado or Goldschmidt. And I think that is the biggest necessity for John Mozeliak this offseason. You need to get yourself another clutch hitter, and I don't know if he's on that roster right now.
Yeah, and that's why
I'm thinking it's probably going to be a shortstop, but you don't have Mozeliak is an Army guy. He is going to try to do the trade, and right now you have a perfect time this offseason to go out there and get a big name shortstop. In years past, when's the last time you seen the Cardinals sign someone big money to play, a big position like that, like shortstop? There's so many names out there, and I guarantee we don't get one of them.
Yeah, and it's tough too because you're going to tie up way too much money in your infield of third base, first base, and shortstop. But the glaring hole is shortstop. Your outfield set. I think you can use a utility role for the second base, whether it's Tommy Edman or Nolan Gorman or Edmundo Sosa. You could do something with that. The glaring hole is shortstop, but you're right. I mean, it's so rare that the Cardinals go out there and spend money. Now, maybe this year's an anomaly, because the Cardinals did make a big-time pitch for David Price when he was a free agent, and they just got outbid by Boston. They had a certain number to get to, and they just didn't want to surpass that. Maybe they go back to that this year because they have a lot of money coming off the books with free agents. But in my opinion, you're not going to spend $300 million on a guy who's the free agent market right now. So I think you need to look at that next tier. Is that next tier Corey Seager because of the injury? Can you get him for a little bit cheaper? We talked to Jim Bowden on our show a couple days ago, and Jim Bowden said he might sign a 1 or 2 year deal just because of his injury history. Do you look at a guy like Marcus Semien, who isn't going to command $300 million, but maybe he commands $150 million? There's names to be out there. I think you have to be aggressive if you miss the playoffs this year. Like, you can't just say, oh, well, we made strides. But the other problem is Paul DeJong. And if Paul DeJong has a good second half of the season, the Cardinals will go back to what they usually do with the outfield and say, well, we saw strides in progress. We're going to stick with the guy because he's cost controlled. And then internal improvements, I don't know if you can get there.
Here, what about this? I'm telling you, I think about this stuff falling asleep, okay? Marcus Semien, he's a leadoff hitter for the Jays, or most of the time he is. Leadoff hitter, boom. You can put DeJong as a DH because that's going to be here next year, even though he's a good defensive shortstop. But it's going to be like that, like you said, with the outfield. We've been saying we need to get rid of Bader, we need to get rid of O'Neill for the last handful of years, and now they're finally starting to show something. If DeJong starts to show something here, then they might just be like, okay, let's keep him. I do think COVID, though, you can point to COVID for DeJong as well. He had 20-something homers, 30 homers, and then it was 2019, I think he got hurt, and then last year was COVID, and he never got going again. And then he got hurt again this year, so I think you can put a little bit of that together. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, if the DH is coming, then why not just put him there?
Yeah, I mean, it would make sense there for him. I mean, without question. I think Nolan Gorman's the obvious DH. Here's the thing. Cardinals aren't going to go spend money in free agency for a DH.
That's my thing.
They're not going to. It's going to be an internal. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they bring back Matt Carpenter to be a DH for him. Like,
no.
Like to say
don't get Fred a heart attack.
Let him go. Let him go.
I know. Fred, believe me, I'm on the same page as you. I mean, I've had the Cook Cart movement on BK and Ferrario, but, I mean, I could see them going by committee for a DH, and DeJong makes sense. But that's where I don't see them going out there and signing a lot of money for a shortstop when you already got a shortstop. Like, because they'll never say, oh, well, he's just a DH now, because he's always going to be the shortstop. Here's the guy that I'd love to see them make a move for, and it won't happen. And I know I'm crazy. Trey Turner makes a lot of sense for this
Cardinals that team. Yesterday. I said his name, but now he got COVID, so.
Yeah, well, that's true. You never know what's going to happen there, but maybe that makes the trade easier. I'm not sure.
Right.
But look, it's something that the Cardinals should look at in the offseason.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what the Nationals will do, but look, if they're offering him up, the report is that he's not going to sign long-term there. Washington's not going to sign him long-term there. Guess what? He's a leadoff hitter.
Right.
He is one of the better hitters in the National Hockey League.
Right.
He's a clutch hitter. He's a base stealer. He's a Gold Glove defender. He is everything the Cardinals need at shortstop.
Exactly.
Do they want to pay the money for it, or do they want to pay the trade for it? Probably not, but man, he makes the most sense out of anybody that's on the market this year.
Yeah, and that's why I felt this whole season that the number one thing we should be looking at, even right now, is a bat. Because let's say if we did get a Max Scherzer or whatever, he can pitch his ass off, but because of the offense and the inconsistencies, his starts can be wasted like DeGrom has been these last couple of years with the Mets.
Yeah, I mean that's like they need pitching help, like without question. Like you need depth for your pitching next year, but like you can get all the pitching you want, but if you can only score 2 runs in a ball game, like you're not going to have 5 Cy Youngs pitching every night. So you need offense, man. And I'm intrigued by what the pitching looks like next year. If Waino comes back, you'll have Flaherty.
Hudson.
Hopefully Michaelis and Hudson will be healthy for you. Reyes is going to get a shot in that rotation. You might even bring KK back, depending on what the situation looks like. And then you got Libator and a couple of others. I like where you're at, but you need another vet for that rotation. But before you could talk about pitching being the savior in a World Series team, you got to go get another bat, and that's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Fred, if you saw my little rant, because Katie Wu said that, Cardinals aren't going to do anything, which, okay, whatever. The Reds are 2 games better than we are. We're pretty much in the same boat, but they've been fixing their bullpen the last 2 days. If I only do half my job, I'm going to get written up or something like that here at work. Mosaic does half his job the last 4 or 5 years, to where he does one part in the off season, but then he doesn't add the other bat or the other arm that we need or the bench bat that we need. And then in the mid-season or in-season trade deadline, he doesn't make any moves. And then I went back. We have missed the playoffs. When we did miss the playoffs in the last 5-6 years, it's been by no more than 3.5 games. You're telling me right now an extra arm or an extra bat wouldn't have helped? Going, because the second half of the year, every time we go and we make it really close towards the end. I just don't understand what they don't see that we're not. What are we not seeing?
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the ask too, and I mean Mo talks about that a lot. I'll give you a great example. Zach Wheeler last year, right? Or was it 2 years ago? That's what everyone. And Bader was the one that they said, you got to trade Bader, and everyone was like, well, why wouldn't you trade Bader for Zach Wheeler? Yeah, I mean, it still looks like it would have been a great deal because Zach Wheeler's pitching his ass off right now.
One of the best pitchers in the game right now.
Yeah, but you don't have Bader on this team. What does your defense look like? Probably not very good because you've moved on from a lot of these guys. So it does come down to the price. I guarantee this trade deadline is just going to be ridiculous. I mean, look, Starling Marte just got traded for a former top 10 overall prospect in baseball from the Athletics. Mm-hmm. Starling Marte. What do you think a pitcher is going to warrant, right? I mean, and if you're Mo, and I understand that this frustrates a lot of Cardinals fans, but if you're Mo, you do have to have the long-term picture in mind. And when you got Nolan Gorman, who looks to be a couple years away, when you have Matthew Libator, who looks to be a couple years away, do you want to trade those guys for somebody who can help you this season? Maybe they help you next year, but they're going to cost a lot of money. Or do you want to go the cost-controlled route? And I know that's the argument a lot of Cardinals fans have right now. The only thing that I can say with that is that I don't know. Baseball is different than hockey. And I know a lot of people say, well, Mo needs to be more like Doug Armstrong. Yeah, but, I mean, prospects don't have as much of an impact in hockey as much as baseball does, if that makes any sense. You can draft, unless you're drafting top 10, top 15, those guys aren't going to have as much of an impact as you would be getting a 3rd or 4th round draft pick in baseball who you let kind of play his time out a little bit. So this is the tough part with the trade deadline. I will say, though, that also you don't see a lot of moves from Mo at the trade deadline because there's been so many bad contracts that the Cardinals have been under. And for the first time in forever that I can feel like, the Cardinals aren't underneath any of those after this season, right? Carpenter's comes off the books. Andrew Miller's comes off the books. Carlos Martinez comes off the books. You're in a pretty good spot to where if Mo wants to be aggressive for the first time in a while, he has the opportunity to.
Thing is, does he have the cojones? Or actually, I won't even say Mo. Bill DeWitt. Will Bill DeWitt give Mo the go ahead and say, you know what? Freak it, be aggressive because we need to bring another impact bat in here and some reliable pitching so we can get to the respect or closer to the respect of teams like the Padres. You know what I'm saying? Like the Dodgers, etc. We need to establish a better identity and a scare tactic to other teams like we used to back in the day. And how can we do that? You have to get better. Like what John what's his name? Shiambi. No, what's his name?
Luke Giambi.
There we go. Thank you. How he said,
gotta get better, dude.
Bottom line, we got to make moves. We can't continue to stand back and say, well, let's just see how this guy works out. Oh, we put so much, stake into him. Let's see. No, you need to get proven guys, and not just proven, consistent guys, not streaky guys who can be good for 1 month and then playoff time come and you 0 for 20. No, we need consistent guys on this team. So last two things. How big is it to you personally for MLS to the Lou? 2 more years, it all starts. City of SC. Your thoughts?
I'm ecstatic. Now, look, self-admittedly, I really have not been a big soccer fan in the past, but I'm getting more into it with the excitement that's building around the MLS coming to St. Louis. And for me, it's not so much you're just getting soccer, it's you're getting your own team. Like the Rams thing left a massive hole in a lot of people's hearts here in St. Louis. And I mean, it's taken away the excitement of the NFL. And nobody wants another team because everyone says, well, why? They're just going to take another one away. And you're getting somebody else's team. This isn't somebody else's team. This is your team. And, I think that's important for fans here in St. Louis. The Cardinals, the Blues, the Rams when they were here. You get a team, people stand by it and they support it. And I think that's the biggest thing for the MLS is that you're getting a team that's yours and people are going to buy into it immediately. I'm excited to see what soccer does here in the city of St. Louis. I'm excited that it's a professional sports team that is run by majority females. I think that is the coolest thing to have Carolyn Kindle Betts at the helm of all of this and then have so many other females a part of it. But the fact that it's ours in 2 years and that you start with your inaugural season and you build from there, man, I can't wait to see what St. Louis does with this because I've seen it with the Blues, I've seen it with the Cardinals, saw it with the Rams, seen it with college sports. Hell, I've seen it with youth sports. People rally around those things, and I would guarantee MLS is going to be at the top of that once they open up in 2 years.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I wouldn't say I'm a diehard soccer fan, but I definitely look forward. I mean, I'm excited now going downtown and just driving by and seeing, the area, the stadium already looking like, wow, it's crazy. But I look forward to being at them games and just seeing another professional team take over downtown. Last thing for me, the XFL. We already was making a huge splash, especially those couple home games we had here in St. Louis. And then, of course, the pandemic happened. But what was your excitement level when we had the Battle Hawks? Caw-caw! And do you feel that it's going to come back and be stronger now that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is a co-owner of the whole league?
Caw is the law, guys. We all know that here in St. Louis. You can't do that. Man, that was so much fun. And, I didn't get the chance to go to any of those games because at the time I was in the middle of hockey season and there was a lot going on. But that was so cool to see downtown. And I mean, my coworker, Michelle Smallman, of course, she was doing some MC work and sideline work with the XFL. That flourished and the damn pandemic took it away from us. I wouldn't be surprised to see that back if The Rock has success with the XFL. Because let's be honest, I mean, there weren't a lot of markets in the XFL that had the numbers that the Battlehawks have, Like, I don't even know if New York was on the same level as the Battlehawks in terms of viewership because people were just bought into it. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the XFL back in St. Louis. I mean, if they start it back up, I think you start with St. Louis and build from there. And I would guarantee, much like the MLS that we just spoke of, if XFL comes back, that place will be sold out because people want football to cheer for, and they want their own football to cheer for rather than somebody else's football to cheer for.
Nice. Well, Ferrario, we definitely appreciate you spending some time with us tonight. show went a little bit longer, but that's how it is when, you're having great conversations about the things that we love with your sports. So, thank you for taking time out to stay on a little bit longer for us. And Joe, thank you very much too for staying on as well. I hope for everyone who watched the show that you all have enjoyed yourself. Please share this stream. Share our pages on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. All the information is on your screen, so there's no excuses. You should know about the platform, Sports Talk Show. Shouts out to Bunny, who was on earlier, getting COVID tests and everything. And yes, she's negative, so it's all good. Stan couldn't be on tonight. He has some internet connection issues. But next week, we do have Ladies Night. I know, Joe, you won't be on next week because you're going to the baseball game. So have fun. Your first time going to a game in, over 2 years, right?
Yeah, I'm just excited to bring Mia. So it's her first baseball game.
Yeah. So enjoy. But we do have a great panel of ladies coming in next week. So stay tuned for that. The promo will be coming out very soon. Once again, Ferrario, thank you very much, man, for being an incredible guest, and I hope to stay in contact with you and we can do more things with 101 ESPN.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for inviting me. This was a lot of fun to talk with both of you. You guys do an incredible work with this platform sports show. So once again, thanks for the invite. Please stay connected with me on social media at Ferrario 101 ESPN. Please keep listening and stay connected with me because I love having conversations with you guys and talking sports. So thank you so much.
Most definitely. So, and Ferrario, if you don't mind, just stay on just for a little bit longer after we end the stream. Do a little quick post-show talk. Everybody else, this is your Wednesday night Sports Delight, the platform sports talk show. I am your boy Smooth, along with
Jogo.
Once again, shouts out to Bunny, to Stan. Hope everything is well with them and with you all. Don't forget, like on Facebook, on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Share this stream. Follow us everywhere on YouTube. Subscribe. Click on that bell because anytime we go live, Joe,
you will be notified.
There it is. The platform sports talk show. When it's about sports, it becomes our business and...
Oh, and business just keeps picking up. You throw me off guard.
Yeah, I got her, y'all. Yeah. All right, well, everyone, y'all have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday evening. And we out. Right. We out.